the most courageous choose peace. That's what I believe. So I'm not undermining the concerns of some people, but what I'm saying is, one, you can strike a balance. So you don't need to undermine health security to invest in, the other security. But at the same time, if you're committed to a political solution, there is a possibility to find a path, to find a solution. So that's what I'm saying. So it's a matter of finding a balance, and it's a matter of more investment in political solutions. It's possible.
Thank you for listening to The Interview. You'll find more in-depth conversations on The Interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts, including episodes with the President of the International Rescue Committee, David Miliband, the former Sudanese leader, Aisha Musa, and the writer, Maggie O'Farrell. Until the next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was The Interview.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Welcome to the show. We're on air till 8:37 a.m. here on CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on that app and on YouTube. Let's say good morning to the team. Mr. Darren Marash is covering YouTube. He's your producer there of the live stream. Mr. Corey Funk is directing the show and will be covering your morning commute. And there's Mr. Abby Adiyemi, who's behind the controls of the show this morning, our senior tech, and Abby covers the forecast on the air. So we're on with you till 8:37. If you have a problem in the morning rush, you can always give us a call a little later on the commuter line at 788-3093. Let's go to Heather Wells and find out what's making headlines this Tuesday morning at 3 minutes to 6. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, days after flooding destroyed basements and uprooted lives across Manitoba, many homeowners worry about insurance and whether the province will help. Rebecca Breckman says her Gross Isle basement overflowed with floodwater, damaging appliances and the foundation. But she says her family's been told it was caused by overland flooding, not sewer backup. We're going to hear what difficulty that poses coming up. As well, charges have been stayed against a Brandon police officer accused of assault and dangerous driving. Constable Myron Ham was charged after a man was hit by a police cruiser in September 2023. We'll hear why those charges were stayed coming up in our next local news at 6:30. I'm ahead of myself.
7:30 will come soon enough.
This morning's moving fast.
No doubt. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
All right. This morning on our program, we have quite a lot of coverage. So Heather was mentioning disaster financial assistance. We are expecting, as she said, later today to have more info. In the meantime, a lot of people with questions. So we're going to try to walk you through that with what we understand about how things work right now and also about how they should work according to one of our experts. So as you might know, it's very complicated after flooding situations like this that are caused by rain. In Winnipeg today, let's have a dip into the forecast. Speaking of rain, sunny sky and a high of 23. So actually today, mix of sun and cloud this afternoon. Yesterday, I think we were all surprised by how heavy that rain ended up being. But today we're in the clear. In Brandon, increasing cloud, but it looks like in the clear for rain as well with a high of 21 degrees. And in Thompson today, you do have some showers, a 60% chance and a high of 12. Stay with us. World Report's next.
On cue. The country music legend Vince Gill is making one record a month for a year to celebrate 50 years as a musician. Vince will tell you why he gave himself that challenge. Also, Vince Gill joined the Eagles a few years ago as their lead singer. He'll tell you the amazing story of his first day on the job.
What I don't want to do is give these people one more reason to not like me.
Q with Tom Power this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland and on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The federal government will table its updated First Nations Clean Drinking Water Bill today. The legislation was previously abandoned when last year's election was called. Janice McGregor is following this story for us from our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, why did MPs wait so long to reintroduce this?
Marcia, after the Indigenous Services Minister promised it was going to be introduced in the fall, and then the Prime Minister said it was coming in the spring, the fact that the Carney government has waited until the final week of the sitting, days before recess, has sparked anxiety that this version of the bill might be weaker than what Justin Trudeau's government had put forward. Consultations with First Nations on legislation to recognize the inherent right to self-government as it relates to water infrastructure on their lands dates back to 2018. The bill that failed to pass in the previous Parliament also established their right to protect source water flowing into their territories. The Ontario and Alberta governments asked the federal government to abandon this bill, fearing it undermines Canadian competitiveness. New Democrat Leah Gazan is concerned that the revival of this water bill is going to be watered down.
I've heard that the government is pulling having clean, safe drinking water as a human right. I'm hoping that's incorrect. If that is correct, that's totally abhorrent.
But Conservative Billy Moran, who was chief of his First Nation before running from Parliament, he wants the focus to be on practical solutions.
Actual money to fix the issues, as opposed to just a fluff bill that says they're going to create more bureaucracy in a bill that's one size fits all.
How does this relate to the ongoing work to lift long-term drinking water advisories still in place in so many First Nation communities?
Well, despite the Trudeau government's effort to find permanent solutions, 38 long-term drinking water advisories remain on 36 different First Nations, 28 in Ontario, the rest in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Nearly half of those now have infrastructure to produce clean water. Nevertheless, the community hasn't agreed to lift the order. Last fall's federal budget introduced over $2 billion to continue to build and fix water and wastewater facilities over the next 3 years.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. The Prime Minister is in France for the G7 Leaders Summit. Today, Mark Carney met with Ukraine's president and unveiled new sanctions against Russia. The measures are the latest in a push to support Ukraine in its ongoing war. Kate McKenna is traveling with the Prime Minister. She has more details.
And the tide is turning as expected.
Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a new round of sanctions targeting Russia ahead of a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the G7.
And what we see today is unity in the G7, unity behind you.
Canada will impose new sanctions targeting Russia's shadow fleet, representing about 160 entities. It's the latest round of support for Ukraine as they regain territory along the front lines.
Very much, DMR, thanks to your team and people of Canada for strong support. We really have great allies.
Zelensky met this morning with G7 leaders to talk about security and peace in Europe. Ukrainian media is reporting he met privately with the host, French President Emmanuel Macron, and U.S. President Donald Trump ahead of time. Trump says with a tentative deal for Iran, he can now spend time on the other major global conflict, Russia's war in Ukraine.
Now that this is finished, we're going to be focusing on that.
Yesterday, he said he spoke with both Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
And I see maybe we can do something there. I really do. I think they're both open to it.
Carney has said this G7 will focus largely on geopolitical issues, but diversifying trade is also on the table. He met with the Italian Prime Minister and announced negotiations for Canada to buy jet trainer aircraft from an Italian company. Later, he'll meet with India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. It's still not clear whether he'll have an official meeting with Trump. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Evian-les-Bains, France.
Britain has issued new sanctions of its own against Moscow. They target so-called shadow fleet vessels carrying Russian liquefied natural gas. The sanctions were unveiled at the G7. They are the world's first known measures against Russian LNG. They also target certain finance groups and networks accused of buying Western technology for Russia's military. U.S. President Donald Trump is downplaying the importance of the conflict in Lebanon.
We have that little pinprick out there that constantly rears its head, and that's Hezbollah.
That view runs counter to Tehran's perspective on Lebanon. Iran's foreign minister says ending the war there is the most important issue in the peace deal with the U.S. In a Canadian exclusive, CBC News is reporting from Iran with permission of the government. It imposes restrictions on international journalists. However, they do not check our material before it's published or broadcast. The CBC's senior international correspondent, Margaret Evans, is in Tehran.
of the many issues with the power to unravel the fragile agreement just reached by Washington and Tehran, Israel's invasion of Lebanon is the most potent. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi today. In our view, there are two parties to this memorandum, he said. One side is America and Israel. The other side is Iran and Hezbollah. Asked if Washington had offered any new guarantees on curbing Israeli military action, Araghchi's spokesman Ismail Bakai implied not, saying Iran would meet like with like. No one can expect the Islamic Republic to carry out its obligations, he said, while the other side refuses to fulfill its own. Many Iranians have expressed both relief and caution over the interim deal. It's expected to lead to negotiations on issues ranging from control of the Strait of Hormuz to lifting decades-old sanctions on Iran. The uncertainty of not one, but two U.S.-Israeli wars against the country over the past year, along with a brutal internal crackdown on activists seeking change in Iran, has taken its toll on people. There's a period of calm and peace, and then right after, the war starts again, says Bahran, a 17-year-old who also points to economic woes and skyrocketing prices. We're so concerned about whether we're able to afford our ordinary lives now or in a week from now, she says. Heavy thoughts for a high school student. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Tehran.
A 6.7 magnitude earthquake has shaken parts of Indonesia. A tremor sends people rushing into the street on Sulawesi Island. It was centered near Palu, the provincial capital. The quake lasted about a minute and was followed by several aftershocks. There are reports of scattered damage. Patients were evacuated from several hospitals, but there are no reports of injuries or deaths. An electrical incident at a BC water park Monday sent 12 middle school students to hospital. Park Administrator Andrew Stoonberger says the kids were holding onto a metal railing waiting for a ride.
There's a queuing area at the bottom of that ride with railing, and when they made contact, that's where the incident occurred for a brief time. That's the space of time that there seemed to be an anomaly. That's what they're investigating right now.
While they do that, the park is closed for at least 48 hours. And a water park near Chilliwack, BC, that is closed. We'll have more on that at cbcnews.ca. They are stronger than you think. That is a finding of a new study of the world's coral reefs. Researchers say the ecosystems are not only surviving threats from climate change, but thriving too. Science reporter Anand Ram has the details.
Coral reefs are often framed as ecosystems beyond saving. This research shows otherwise.
Emily Darling, Director of Coral Conservation at the Wildlife Conservation Society, knows the difference between struggling coral and resilient ones.
There are 3 times more reefs that may be capable of surviving the climate crisis than previously thought.
From the Bahamas to the Philippines, the new study, currently under peer review, says there are reefs where corals can avoid, resist, and even recover from one of their greatest threats, extreme heat.
When you go down, they're all white.
Craig Dahlgren is executive director of the Perry Institute for Marine Science. He's seen how heat drives this coral bleaching. It's not a death sentence if there's relief, but a powerful El Nino is here. And then there's climate change.
Every degree of warming that we can avoid matters.
A call to action to save these coastal ecosystems that support marine life, boost fishing economies, and protect shorelines. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm R.C. Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we're live in our CBC Studio 50 on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube. Lots of places you can find us. This hour on the show, we've got something that we thought we'd take to the streets of Winnipeg and try out. There's a new trend that seeks out rejection instead of avoiding it. Can getting rejected on purpose be a good thing? As I mentioned, we took that to the streets of Winnipeg. You're going to hear what happened when we did it, so stay tuned. Also this hour on the program, we will hear more on the story that everyone is watching in the world. The U.S. and Iran saying they do have an agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Experts say Canadians could be waiting a long time for relief at the pumps, though, so we'll have one of those experts on to analyze next steps and talk about why it's unprecedented should tolls be implemented for people to be passing through the Strait of Hormuz. So stay tuned. That's all still ahead on the show. We get started, though, with Manitoba headlines. And from our news center live, here now is Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, family and friends are mourning a Winnipeg couple who died in a motorcycle crash over the weekend. The man and woman, both 65, died when the motorcycle they were riding was hit by a pickup truck in the arm of St. Andrews. The couple's family has identified them as Brenda Lee and Dan Keats, and they were active in the Winnipeg Harley Riders Association. Fellow members now plan to honor the couple with a memorial ride. Winnipeg's mayoral campaign is already 1/4 of the way through, but the incumbent candidate has yet to make a campaign promise. Scott Gillingham says for now, he's focused on being mayor. We'll hear from him in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Heather Wells, I have to mention something I was at last night.
Okay.
My sister's retiring from teaching after like 30 plus years.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely, Helen. Congrats. But she's been to a couple of the ceremonies for, retiring teachers, which was lovely. So I was at one of those last night in Transcona at a lovely dinner. However, one of the ceremonies she was at this week, and I'm going to try to find this person, honored someone. They honor not just teachers, but anyone retiring from that River East Transcona School Division. One of the people was a bus driver. I want you to guess how old this person was when they retired. They've been bus driving for most of their life and career.
Like we're talking a school bus.
A school bus, yeah. Guess an age. Go for it.
Okay, without knowing anything, guess an age?
And
I'm going to say, okay, so let me
I
just
set
say,
you up for like an older age, but yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to say 77.
92. 92 years old.
No.
Yeah, 92 years old. There's a retiring school bus driver in River East Transcona School Division. I've got to find this person. Yeah. Isn't that incredible?
My parents weren't driving in their 80s.
I know.
Wow, a school bus.
Yeah. So apparently it was quite something at that dinner when obviously this person went up and accepted their bell. They were giving out beautiful school bells to all of the retirees. I just thought that was lovely.
I bet you the kids loved him.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thanks, Heath.
Thank you.
So congrats to all the people, whether you're retiring or graduating. It's that time of year, right? All the ceremonies going on. Even the little ones. You see the pictures of people all over Facebook with their little kids with their grad caps on, graduating from kindergarten. All right, let's get into what's going on in the weather forecast today. We do take a turn to some drier conditions. Good morning, Abby Adiemi.
Yeah, good morning, Marcy. We have that stark split today. Southern Manitoba will start with clear conditions and we'll see lots of sunshine with seasonal warmth across most of the regions. While up north, we're dealing with some damp and cool conditions. We're already seeing rain towards the Thompson Lake area this morning. But for Winnipeg, we are looking at a beautiful day on the way for the city with early sunny skies, giving way to a mix of sun and clouds sometime this afternoon. Current temperatures, we're seeing 8 degrees at the airports and near 12 degrees at the Forks. It's clear there. We will see temperatures really hover around this 11, 12 as we aim for a seasonal high of 23 later in the day. And that's what we will see across the board. Though this 23 we'll get to will come with some cool breeze because we're going to notice the winds really push things. There's a slim chance of showers later into the overnight period into tomorrow morning, and that's what we'll see across southern Manitoba. But up north, it's more about the cool and damp conditions. Just 3 degrees with mist and foggy conditions in the Churchill area this morning.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk is in with a look at the commute. We got anything going on?
Nothing going on right now. Haven't heard of any major issues. Of course, Highway 10 still closed, I'll say, between Swan River and Minnetonus. Other than that, though, things seem pretty quiet overall. But if you do see something, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
So in a minute, Corey, as you know, we've got this item coming up about rejection therapy and whether or not it's good for you to be rejected.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You have thoughts on that? I know I have thoughts on it.
Oh, I've been rejected many times.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I mean, I wanted to work at CBC for years. I got rejected like 3, 4, 5 times
Yeah.
before I actually got a job here.
I've been cut from lots of sports teams, like from
Oh,
when I
yeah?
was young.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of, they often say sports teaches resilience, and it certainly did for me.
Mhm.
And not just sports, but I mean choirs, and, I also sang in choir and vocal jazz and stuff. And so I've been through cuts that way and rejection. I do think actually that some, aspect of that, there's something to that, to understanding resilience.
It's what you do. I think it kind of like lights a little fire under you,
Yeah.
right? It's what you do with the rejection, I think, right?
And it is inevitable in
Yes,
life. So
exactly.
we can't protect ourselves from it. In a moment, we'll see what happened when we took that idea, though, to the street in Winnipeg. And so as we were just talking about, rejection therapy is this trend on TikTok, and it encourages users to seek out rejection on purpose with a goal to overcome anxiety. CBC's Mary Big George was the one who got assigned to take this to the street to check out if it actually works for people and whether or not it's the best way to deal with rejection. She hit the streets right around our station here on Portage Ave around CBC Manitoba and spoke to some people about it.
Hi, can I interview you? I'm with CBC and I'm writing a story about rejection. You don't want to? Okay, that's okay, no problem. Getting rejected can be pretty rough. I should know. You just saw me get rejected by interviewees for this story, and it felt pretty bad. But the anxiety that comes with getting rejected is actually a pretty common thing to experience. According to a 2022 study from the University of Manitoba, mood and anxiety disorders affect more than 1 out of 5 Manitobans. If you walk into a room with 100 people in it, 20 of those people will be struggling.
The point of rejection therapy is to purposely seek out rejection.
This is day 100 of getting rejected every single day of 2025.
Hi, do you want to be a friend? I'm so done living my life being too scared to get what I want. So let's go do rejection therapy.
It's definitely trending right now, but does getting rejected on purpose actually help with anxiety? Experts say the practice can be effective if approached carefully.
I believe that rejection therapy is effective because it is introducing small doses of exposure. And exposure is very important when it comes to managing anxiety.
Alex Peterson, the Regional Program Coordinator at Anxiety Disorders Association of Manitoba, says that rejection therapy is an application of exposure therapy, which is a well-researched psychological treatment within cognitive behavioral therapy that helps people confront fears, anxieties, and traumatic memories in a safe, controlled environment.
It is more beneficial if we introduce it slowly and more methodically. So instead of just doing it randomly when you feel you're welcome to do it, try and do it twice per week to start, and then slowly introduce it more and more to maybe 3 times a week to 4 times a week, and then eventually try doing it every day. And then from there, you'll start to feel yourself not reacting the same way, and you'll feel that anxiety reduce a lot.
But there are definitely some who are skeptical of the term rejection therapy specifically.
So essentially what rejection therapy is a remarketing or repackaging of existing cognitive behavioral therapy interventions for anxiety.
Dr. Corey McKenzie, a professor of clinical psychology at the University of Manitoba, clarified that while exposure therapy is an effective treatment to apply for anxiety, the term rejection therapy is a marketing strategy repackaging already existing CBT treatment. The methods can be quite effective when practiced under the right conditions.
The essential ingredient is you ask people to move into situations that they've been avoiding. And in doing that, it reduces this sort of catastrophic thinking that people have.
It's very important that you're consistent with the rejection therapy, and your body is getting used to feeling those levels of anxiety. So then your body gets used to those levels of anxiety and then starts to be easier from there.
Armed with this knowledge, I hit the streets and asked Winnipeggers why rejection is so scary.
I think because the consequences of rejection. They think that once they get rejected, it's the end, and there's no coming back from it at all.
It's tough accepting rejection.
I asked my brother for something and he said no, and it kind of hurt my heart a little bit.
But when asked if rejection can sometimes be a good thing, most people agreed that learning to cope with it can actually be pretty beneficial.
Yeah, because it also helps you figure yourself out, It's a life experience, and I feel like everyone should go through it. It's a lesson.
It could change you. Not every door is going to open for you. Some are going to be rejected and say, no, we don't want you, eh? But then there's another place. You keep going, you keep, you don't give up. There's something else out there for you too, eh?
So turns out getting rejected might not be as bad as you think. For CBC News, Mary Big George, Winnipeg.
By being rejected, because it's interesting. I went right to a sports analogy. I hadn't even thought about professionally, but every day folks say no, and that's okay, right? We all need to be able to say no to things that we don't want to do. So on the other side of that is rejection. You can weigh in on this if you've got a story. It might be cool to hear. 788-3205. What rejection in your life taught you the best or biggest lasting lesson? 788-3205. Once again, thanks to Mary Big George for hitting the streets.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
It looks like this is maybe a one-day blip when farmers across the province need hot and dry.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take.
In general, it's harder to find a job even if you're educated.
I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. From 12:15 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
When I was 5 or 6, my parents gave me seeds and helped me plant them. That was probably close to 70 years ago. And here I am still gardening.
It just brings everyone together. Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you weekdays on CBC.
6:22 a.m. How you doing out there? Tuesday morning. We're going to have a sunny day ahead in Winnipeg today. It's 11 right now and partly cloudy downtown, where our CBC studio is. So if you're driving by, or if you're give us a honk. If you're walking or biking by, give us a wave through the CBC studio window before we have to put the blind down, because it's going to be sunny today, as we mentioned. Next on the show, let's turn our attention to national and international matters. After the U.S. and Iran announced that deal to end the war and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, markets spiked. Oil prices fell, but there is still a lot that needs to be done before oil and gas are flowing through freely, and before the amount of oil and gas in the Gulf return to normal levels. Richard Norris is here to analyze today's situation and where we're at, and what to expect from Friday. So he's an energy security expert and fellow at the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what still needs to happen before oil tankers can pass through the Strait of Hormuz at previous levels?
Yeah, I think we're going to need to see this agreement that is being much touted at the moment becoming proven to be sort of durable and credible. We've had a lot of talks, a lot of false starts over the last few months, and I think ship owners and insurers are going to really need to see that. A second leg of that is going to need to be a demining of the Strait of Hormuz. That is technically complex, time intensive. People don't really know what is actually involved in getting that done. And then if those two points can be ticked, then I think we're going to need to see some clarity on the tolls that may well be imposed on shipping going across the strait. Who's going to apply them, how much they're going to be, and so on. So I think there are multiple steps to get to to the pre-war situation of free flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz.
Can you help us understand the tolls and what they're going? If that's going to be something that happens, what will they look to as a model in the world of how that could happen?
Well, it's an interesting one because generally there is no equivalent that I know of. The waters in the Strait of Hormuz, they're not international waters. They are by legal definitions owned by the Omanis on one side and the Iranians on the other. But generally speaking, there's a free passage of navigation under international maritime law, and that applies whether it's through the Bosphorus Strait in Turkey, the Malacca Strait in Southeast Asia, and so on. So a transit toll would be new. What ship owners do typically pay is very specific fees if there is necessity for pilots or any very specific roles. They're not just transit fees. So this will be new.
Which is why it could take some time. Do you have any sense of how long it might take for things to reopen, or do you think that this could be maybe a graduated thing where they go back? I mean, if they're putting in tolls and it's never been done, this could take months or longer. What's your sense of a timeline?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the tolls are going to be the worst part of it. I think the probably the biggest problem is the agreement that is going to be signed, hopefully on Friday, is just a 60-day ceasefire in which will allow time for a more definitive agreement to be signed. And of course, all of the difficult negotiating points have been kicked down the road for that subsequent negotiation. So there are a lot of things that can go wrong in the meantime. What's interesting is that if you look at the price structure on the futures market, there is an implicit assumption that there will be a relatively quick recovery post-ceasefire. People who work in the physical trading of oil don't seem to believe that. So we've got a very unusual situation where there's a mismatch between what the market and the pricing is saying and what people who are actually buying and selling oil actually seem to think.
What do you think this will all mean for gasoline and diesel prices here in Canada?
Unfortunately, I think we're going to see them staying at these relatively elevated levels. But more specifically, I think we're going to see a lot of volatility. I think, weeks, months, and possibly even beyond months, we're going to see prices bouncing around a lot more than we're used to.
In terms of the infrastructure itself, I mean, we did see energy infrastructure targeted during the war, as you alluded to, natural gas fields in Qatar. How long could it take for the production to return to normal in the Gulf? Do we actually have a full understanding of how much infrastructure was damaged?
Yeah, I think the infrastructure damage is quite well known, and it's particularly relevant to natural gas, the liquefied natural gas that comes out of Qatar. They've announced that they lost about 20% of their capacity at the Ras Laffan installation, which is an absolutely enormous gas processing facility. And that has direct implications particularly for Europeans who have long-term gas supply contracts from Qatar. These are very complex infrastructure. You don't buy spare parts off the shelf. They have very long lead times. And Qatar is talking years before that comes back up to full capacity. Similarly, refineries have been hit, so refined products, petroleum products being exported out of the Gulf are going to be affected. In terms of crude oil, it's slightly more nuanced because when oil wells are shut in, certain wells can come back with a production that's actually better than they had before they were shut in. In other situations, oil wells can suffer irreversible damage and will never produce at the levels they produced before. So there's a lot of uncertainty of what will actually happen if wells have been shut in completely and if we then try and bring them back on.
Well, Step One will be watching what happens Friday. Thank you very much for your analysis. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That's Richard Norris with the analysis this morning, an energy security expert and fellow at the Canadian Institute for Global Affairs. Next local news coming up in a minute here, and then national and international at the top of the clock. If you need us on your morning commute, by the way, here across Manitoba, please let us know, 788-3093 if you have anything to pass along to us, and we'll get it to listeners if there's any challenge out there. In addition, if you're a new listener to the show, welcome. We have business news coming up for you. Crystalie Ramlakan joins us from our desk. She will be joining us via Zoom. Today, she's talking about more layoffs at a big Canadian telecom company. So we're going to hear more about who's being laid off over at Bell Canada, the parent company BCE, cutting almost 700 jobs. In addition, Fox, staying with media news, is buying streaming pioneer Roku. That started developing yesterday. So we'll ask Crystalie what more details she knows about that. Right now, though, it is time for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30 it is 10 degrees and it is going to be a beautiful morning, a beautiful afternoon. Sunshine to start, then a mix of sun and clouds, a westerly breeze, and a high today of 23. A Winnipeg motorcycle group plans to honor a couple who died in a crash over the weekend. Dan Keats and Brenda Lee died Saturday after the motorcycle they were riding was hit by a pickup truck in the RM of St. Andrews. Susan Kirk is a close friend and fellow member of the Winnipeg Harley Riders Association. She says Keats was the group's treasurer while Lee kept things running.
No one really knows at this point how it's going to continue without Brenda. She was a very big part of that. Both of them were, but Brenda was like the person to go to if you wanted anything. The two of them, though, were like the pillars of the Winnipeg Harley Riders Association.
Zirk says Lee and Keats, both 65, were amazing people with big hearts who were always there for family and friends. The group plans to hold a memorial ride in their honor. You can hear more on this story coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. Days after flooding destroyed basements and uprooted lives across Manitoba, many homeowners worry about insurance and whether the province will help. Premier Wabkanu has pledged to help people rebuild and recover. Rebecca Breckman says her Grosse Isle basement overflowed with floodwater, damaging appliances and the foundation, but she says her family may not be covered by insurance. They've been told it was caused by overland flooding, not sewer backup.
It feels like a huge, devastating loss. Like we assumed we were covered for it, right? Like you don't think those things are going to happen.
Breckman and her family are desperately drying and gutting the interior, trying to salvage what's left of their house. The province says its disaster financial assistance program will offer extra support to those facing financial hardship, including people who are underinsured. Well, Scott Gillingham registered to run for mayor of Winnipeg on the first day of the campaign period, but he has yet to make his first campaign announcement. The incumbent candidate says he's being strategic.
I asked, my campaign team, even before the campaign began, that we be ready for the most difficult slate of candidates and prepare for that. We're going to be strategic in the timing of the rollout of the platform and pieces of the platform, and so I take nothing for granted.
The mayoral race officially started May 1st. It is now 1/4 of the way through Election Day, October 28th. The federal government will table its updated First Nations Clean Drinking Water Bill today. It reportedly removes a provision from a previous version. The clause would have recognized First Nations' right to clean drinking water. That legislation was abandoned when last year's election was called. Today's bill will likely not be debated before the fall. This is the last week before MPs break for the summer. The U.S.-Iran peace deal is being tested. Israel's military says Hezbollah fired rockets at troops in southern Lebanon. It comes as Iran's foreign minister warns ending the war in Lebanon is the most important issue in this peace plan. He says there are two parties to this peace deal, the U.S. and Israel on one side, Iran and Hezbollah on the other. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is angry he was presented with the plan and not consulted. He vows to keep forces in Lebanon to protect Israel from Hezbollah threats. A signing ceremony for the U.S.-Iran agreement is set for Friday in Switzerland. The Prime Minister is in France for the G7 Leaders Summit. Today, Mark Carney met with Ukraine's president, unveiling new sanctions against Russia. They target Russia's shadow fleet, energy revenues, and defense, industrial, and disinformation actors. You can hear more on these stories coming up on World Report at 7. Charges have been stayed against a Brandon police officer accused of assault and dangerous driving. Constable Myron Ham was charged after a man was hit by a police cruiser in September 2023. The charges were recommended last year by Manitoba's police watchdog. It had said the man accused of arson fled as officers arrived and suffered a broken arm after being hit by a cruiser in front of Brandon Police Headquarters. But Crown prosecutors said there was no reasonable likelihood of conviction. The officer's lawyer criticized the handling of his client's case, including the fact it took about 18 months for the police watchdog to complete its investigation. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather Wells.
Thank you.
Let's go live now to Abby Adiyemi with your regional forecast.
Yeah, we're looking at that split today with a clear start in the southern part of the province, and we'll see temperatures warm to close to the mid-20s for most of the regions, but up north we're still contending with some damp and cool conditions. We saw light rain in the Thompson area. Now it's cloudy over there. For Winnipeg right now, a beautiful day ahead. We are looking at sunny skies already outside. This would give way to a mix of sun and clouds sometime this afternoon. Current temperatures sitting between 9 and 11 degrees depending on where you are in the city, and we're warming rapidly towards a high of 23 under some western winds. Expect clouds to build overnight, and we might just see some rain and even thunderstorms overnight into tomorrow morning. But for other regions in the south, from Port Luperi towards the modern area, we're seeing sunny conditions there. 10 degrees, warming up to 24. Brandon is clear at 5 degrees. We are heading to 21. Duffin towards the Russell-Roblin area, sunny skies there. Highs of 23, current temperatures around 9, while Gimli is sitting at 11, warming close to 25 today under some mild winds. Then we cross into the central part. The Power Flame, we're looking at clear and sunny conditions there. 7 on the way to 20. Norway House and nearby sunny, also 8 degrees, highs of 16. Thompson, Linley, Gillam, where we saw rain showers earlier. Now we just have cloudy conditions there. Few showers still spotted here and there. Temperatures around 8 degrees. Most of the regions will see highs heading towards 13. While for Tudula Lake, it's 5 degrees, a few showers ending this afternoon. Then we'll see some cloudy skies. Highs will only get to 7. Churchill sitting at 0 still with those misty and foggy conditions. You top out at 3 degrees today. So southern regions, lots of sunshine in the forecast. Then we'll see showers overnight. And for the city right now, expecting a beautiful high of 23. Right now it's 11 degrees.
You've been exploring. I've been watching you on Facebook. I saw beautiful photos of the Leaf and Hecla Island, I think, maybe.
Yes, I've been doing some green therapy. You know, this is the time of the year where I just explore my green therapy things. And I thought, you know what, I want to see some rocky formations. So I was at Hecla Village this past weekend, and it was really peaceful there.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know, I've stayed up there and golfed up there, like there's a hotel and such, but I've never, because we've been golfing, taken bikes. You can rent bikes and go all around the paths, and you got some beautiful shots.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to doing so
This
much
summer.
this summer. Something actually caught my attention while I was at the village. I saw, the pelicans doing their thing, and then one seagull with them, and I'm like, dude, are you sure you're supposed to be hanging out with this?
You're with the wrong flock,
You're with the wrong flock, man. So that caught my attention this weekend.
Cute. Well, we're just at the beginning of it. Summer officially, of course, begins next weekend on the 21st. And as Abby said, we're going to be dry and sunny today if you're going exploring. Let's get into the morning commute, which I believe there's a couple things to mention, Corey.
Yes, so got a call from Sarah, actually. She said there's a bunch of lights out in the main Stradbrook area. So Main and Stradbrook, those lights are out right now as well. As she went through her drive, she knows Donald and Stradbrook as well as Donald and River. All those lights completely out right now. Treat that as a four-way stop. Maybe other lights in the area as well, because I actually just looked on the hydro outage map, and there's actually a big outage in that area that runs from Main Street up Stradbrook into pretty much the entirety of Osborne Village, even up onto Wellington as well. So affecting, it looks like almost 800 customers in that area. So I'm not sure if there's other intersections out as well. So if you're going through that area, just keep your wits about you. It seems like there's a power outage there going on. If you do see anything else though going on, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line if you're walking your bike and you're driving. Would love to hear from you. That number 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Crystal Ramlakan is here with us now via Zoom with Business News. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with the layoffs coming to a big Canadian telecom. How many people? What do we know so far?
Yeah, so Bell Canada's parent company, BCE, is cutting another almost 700 jobs as part of a reorganizational effort that began late last year. So the company says the cuts include about 230 unionized roles, and that in most cases, employees are being offered voluntary separation packages. And Bell Media is not impacted in this round of cuts, though. Now, Bell cut nearly 700 jobs last November as well, mostly non-unionized management positions from across the country. And last October, the company announced it was seeking to find $1.5 billion in savings by 2028 through a company-wide transformation and focus on operational efficiencies. So in 2024, BCE also slashed 9% of its workforce, affecting about 4,800 jobs. And that shakeup also saw the company offload dozens of radio stations and end multiple of television newscasts. So the company has seen a dip in profit compared to last year, but it now expects to generate more revenue from AI as it moves forward with plans to build a cluster of data centers. And staying on telecoms, Marcy, the CRTC has again issued warnings to Bell and TELUS over recently introduced fees the regulator says could be in violation of its new policy prohibiting telecoms from charging customers when they activate, change, or cancel plans. So in letters addressed to the two companies last Friday, the day that the new rules took effect, the CRTC said Bell and TELUS have until Wednesday, so tomorrow, to confirm they have stopped charging these fees. So last month, the commission warned Bell that a new $40 device handling fee could violate the policy, and TELUS introduced a $15 fee last week for customers switching to a new SIM card, which also quickly drew the regulator's attention.
Let's go to another story this morning. Fox is buying streaming pioneer Roku. That news coming out yesterday. What more do we know today?
Yes, so Fox has agreed to buy Roku in a cash and stock deal valued at $22 billion, including debt. So Roku will continue to be run as an open, partner-friendly platform. And there appears to be no immediate changes that customers will see for now. And the two companies say combined, they will become the third largest player in U.S. television, at least, by share of viewing. So the deal will give Fox access to more than 100 million global households, along with the Roku channel and its first-party data. So, Fox could get into households that don't necessarily already subscribe to Fox, right, through Roku. And Fox oversees, as we know, a massive sports, news, and entertainment network, as well as Tubi, which it acquired in 2020, which is another ad-supported free streaming service. And Fox CEO Lachlan Murdoch says combining the businesses will bring together Fox's live news and sports content with a streaming platform with large viewership. And if this deal closes, Fox will control more of what viewers watch, how they discover it, and how it gets monetized. And the deal is expected to close in the first half of next year. But, it still needs approval from shareholders and regulatory approval.
And finally, let's talk about going to the movies. Cineplex is raising its prices.
Yeah, so it's raising its prices for its CineClub memberships for the first time since launching the program. So starting July 15th, the cinema chain will start charging customers $10.99 for monthly memberships or just over $120 a year for annual memberships. So since it launched CineClub in 2021, it has been charging members $9.99 per month or just over $110 per year. And member price tickets will also increase from $9.99 to $10.99. So Cineplex says the changes will help keep this program sustainable. And Cineplex is also changing the number of scene points members receive when redeeming movie tickets. So instead of 50 points for each redeemed monthly member ticket, earning is based on the current Scene Plus earn rate, which is just 3 points for every dollar spent on a regular movie ticket and 6 points for every dollar spent spent on a premium movie ticket. So it looks like you have a little bit of less earning power there when it comes to points. And the changes will also alter how members can use the program for event screenings.
All right. Thanks, Crystalie.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Crystalie Ramlakan on Zoom this morning, live with us with our business news. Well, if today happens to be one of those days at school where you're outside or you have field days, something like that, it's looking good. Mix of sun and cloud and sunshine in Winnipeg, as well increasing cloud in Brandon. Will be a high of 23 in Winnipeg, 21 in Brandon, and in Thompson, a little wet if that's your outdoor day. 60% chance of showers for you and a high of just 12 degrees up in Thompson. Well, let's return to a story that's in our news this morning about people who are in mourning. Brenda Lee and Dan Keats are being remembered as pillars of a Winnipeg motorcycle group. The couple died Saturday after their motorcycle, as you may have heard, was hit by a pickup truck in the arm of St. Andrews. That's according to Manitoba RCMP. Susan Zirk is a close friend of the couple and a member of the Winnipeg Harley Riders Association. She was on the group ride with Dan and Brenda when all of this happened. She spoke with CBC's Manitoba's Gavin Axelrod about what she has been thinking about since the accident.
Well, unfortunately, I've been thinking about the actual day because that's kind of stuck in my head. But thinking back to when we first met Dan and Brenda, it was for Dan's 60th birthday, and we were just down the street and came over. I thought Brenda hated me. She was so busy looking after everything by herself. I thought she hated me because she had this stern look on her face. And then we got to know them, and she was the most loving, giving person you'd ever know. Both of them would give the shirts off their back for you. Their home was always open to you. She fed us numerous times. Like every time our organization had a meeting, we were always here first. We would either eat before the meeting or eat and then go to the meeting. And just getting to know them over the years, we just became really good friends and would confide. She hated hugging, so I didn't hug too much. But we just became such good friends. She was like, her and Dan were like family. They're just amazing people, and they're loved by everyone.
How hard has it been, not just for you guys as really close friends and almost family, but like the rest of the community and the people who rode with them for years?
I haven't really experienced too much of outside of our organization, but with the Winnipeg Harley Riders, we have a couple of members. The ride on Saturday was with a different group, and they offered us some services. A number of our members are going to take that service because it's for emotional support, any kind of emotional trauma that we might be feeling. And there's a couple of members who are taking full advantage of that. They're in tears all day long, having a really hard time dealing with it. And a lot of them were, anyone who's having such a hard time was on the ride as well. So at the scene.
That must be really difficult to process
Mm-hmm.
all that right now.
Yeah, and that vision just keeps going over and over in my head.
When you sort of have been thinking over the past few days, like how difficult has it been?
Oh, it's been horrible. If I'm busy doing something, like I went to work today, it's mostly okay, but then come and visit family, and it's very difficult.
For people who are there, or like for people who ride, like, do you think this is maybe like shaken them from?
Some, definitely. Yeah, I think so. We were on our bikes the next day. It's like, you got to get back on and go. Can't let it scare you, but you just got to open your eyes and be careful and watch out for what's around you. Could happen anywhere.
So that's the CBC's Gavin Axelrod in conversation with Susan Zirk, who's a close friend of Brenda Lee and Dan Keats. As you heard, Lee and Keats are being remembered as pillars of the Winnipeg motorcycle group. The couple died Saturday after their motorcycles were hit. Their motorcycle was hit by a pickup truck in the arm of St. Andrews, according to our CMP. If you want to read more about the story, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Local news is in decline across Canada, and this is bad news for all of us. With less local news, noise, rumors, and misinformation fill the void, and it gets harder to separate truth from fiction. That's why CBC News is putting more journalists in more places across Canada, reporting on the ground from where you live, telling the stories that matter to all of us. Because local news is big news. Choose news, not noise. CBC News.
It's 10 to 7 right now on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us this morning on the show. It is Tuesday, June 16th. It's partly sunny now. Actually, I shouldn't even say partly. That sky is really blue in downtown Winnipeg. Loads of sunshine. Don't forget the shades today for sure. Well, Parliament breaks for the summer on Friday. Speaking of sunshine, it means that it's a busy week in Ottawa as the government tries to push through the last of its agenda. Ryan Tumulty's here to tell us what's on that agenda, political reporter with the Toronto Star. Hi, Ryan.
Hi there.
So in this week, the Liberals are focused on big tech. Give us a recap of their main moves.
Yeah, so we've seen a couple of things here that are, I would say, Silicon Valley focused. So last week, of course, we saw the Digital Safety Act. This is legislation, the headline was, it's going to ban people under the age of 16 from having social media accounts, keeping the kids off things like Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. So that is a big move. Obviously there are lots of details to that legislation that are going to get worked out through the summer and into next fall, but that's the sort of headline. And then yesterday we had new privacy legislation. Now, that is big tech focused because it's going to regulate how companies collect data on you, your right to have them delete that data, the rules around, consent to get them to make sure you understand what you're handing over when you sign up for a new service, things like that. So that's going to be a big piece of it. And then, it isn't legislation, but the government has also introduced its AI strategy recently. That is a focus on, getting Canadians to use AI more often, offering training, offering support for businesses who want to use it, that sort of thing. So all very big tech focused over the past couple of weeks.
What does the government still need to do to finalize before the break?
Yeah, so one thing is C30. Now, this is the bill that is sort of tied to the spring economic update. So all the little tax measures and the goodies that were in that economic update, they need legislation to make them real. And that legislation got fast-tracked last night. The House of Commons sat until just after midnight to make that happen. And so the government is expecting to have that passed. Probably it will pass today based on that motion. There's also a piece of legislation that provided housing money, about $1.7 billion spread out to the provinces and territories. That legislation, I think the government is going to try to push through. It wants the money to be out the door and in the hands of provinces because, we're right in the middle of this construction season. So it wants to see the opportunity for that to do good in this year and not wait another year before you see real impacts.
Yeah, a lot of people anxious about that here in Manitoba for sure. We're in a position now, Ryan, where we can look back. So why don't we go there next? How do you think the parties have handled the transition to the Liberal majority over the course of this session and that change happening?
Yeah, I would say all of the parties are doing this gradually. Even the Liberals, yes, they're in a majority right now, and they have used that to fast track some legislation. But what they were doing so far this session was taking legislation they introduced when they had a minority and pushing it through when they had a majority. What I think might be different in the fall is that they will introduce legislation knowing they have a majority, knowing that they don't need anybody from the opposition benches to help them push it through. And I think that may change what we see in bills and maybe even see them become less willing to compromise on things in committees and stuff like that. The Conservatives, I think, are sort of returning to their roots, returning to the kind of message they had in the election and before the election last year. Pierre Poilievre, there was talk about him maybe moving towards the center. I think that talk is over. He is playing to his base of supporters, and I think that's going to continue, at least until the lead up to the next election. And I think, the NDP are in a different spot as well. They are trying to introduce a new leader on top of everything that's happened in Parliament. So, we're seeing them make different moves as well. And I think that is going to continue through the summer as Canadians get to know Abbie Lewis and learn about who he is.
Some Canadians might be not clear on what happens to the bills and discussions that don't make it over the finish line in time, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, this is the interesting thing about a majority is we just pick up again where we left off. When the House comes back in September, the government can pick up all those bills. There's lots of things that are not going to pass this week. All of those big tech bills, for example, they're introduced far too late to actually pass. So the government will pick those things up in September, and they don't have to worry about a supply and confidence deal falling apart. They don't have to worry about a minority turning on them. They don't have to worry about a snap election. So they can pick off where they left off.
All right, Ryan, thank you.
All right, thank you.
That's Ryan Tumulty, political reporter with the Toronto Star. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're live on CBC Manitoba this morning in sunny downtown Winnipeg, where it is 11 degrees. Sunshine for the day, a high of 23, and lighter winds than we've had. There are some power outages to tell you about. Corey was reporting he was hearing it could be many as 800 customers around the village that have no power. Now, this is affecting traffic because Donald and Stradbrook, Main Stradwick, Donald River, the lights are all out there and flashing red. We got that from a caller that gave us a call. So those lights are completely out. We now understand that about 1,000 customers actually, so even more than 800 have power out. Hydro estimates power will be back by 9:30 this morning. In the next hour of Information Radio, we're going to be talking about last week's flood damage. A lot of Manitobans are learning their insurance does not cover what they thought that it would. Up ahead, we're going to hear from someone who says that insurance in Canada has becoming complicated, it's expensive. He's going to talk about how we got here and also has some ideas to fix it, so stay tuned for that. In addition, in the next hour on CBC, last week, the Winnipeg Police Force rolled out its body cam pilot project. Later, we're going to hear from the lawyer of a family who's been calling for officers to use police body cams in this tech after their son was shot and killed by police, so stay tuned for that interview. And to something that sort of matches the texture of this beautiful sunny morning in Winnipeg, if you're looking to bring more native wildflowers into your yard or garden, be careful what you reach for. A local wildflower expert is going to be on to talk about what is really in some of those wildflower seed mixes that you can find at some of the big garden stores. And some of them are things that you might not be wanting to put in the ground because they could be invading. So stay tuned. That's all coming up in the next hour of the show. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She has more headlines on stories this morning in Manitoba.
Good morning. Well, days after flooding destroyed basements and uprooted lives right across southern Manitoba, many homeowners worry about insurance and whether the province will help. Rebecca Breckman says her Gros Isle basement overflowed with floodwater, damaging appliances, the foundation, and countless mementos. But she says her family was told it was caused by overland flooding, not sewer backup. The province says its disaster financial assistance program will offer extra support for those facing financial hardship. So we'll hear more on that. As well, charges have been stayed against a Brandon police officer accused of assault and dangerous driving. Those stories and more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Stay with us. The latest on national and international news is coming up on World Report at 7 o'clock. Right now, it's just about a minute to.
on The Current.
With this secret alter ego pretending that he was the son of a Russian oligarch.
In 2019, a teenager fell to his death in a wealthy neighborhood in London under mysterious circumstances. The journalist Patrick Radden-Keefe will be here to talk about a story about London, lying, and what parents don't know about their kids. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The Prime Minister is in France for the G7 Leaders Summit. Today, Mark Carney met with Ukraine's president and unveiled new sanctions against Russia. The measures are the latest in a push to support Ukraine in its ongoing war. Kate McKenna is traveling with the Prime Minister. She has more details.
And the tide is turning as expected.
Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a new round of sanctions targeting Russia ahead of a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the G7.
And what we see today is unity in the G7, unity behind you.
Canada will impose new sanctions targeting Russia's shadow fleet, representing about 160 entities. It's the latest round of support for Ukraine as they regain territory along the front lines.
Very much, dear Mark, thanks to your team and people of Canada for strong support. We really have great allies.
Zelensky met this morning with G7 leaders to talk about security and peace in Europe. Ukrainian media is reporting he met privately with the host, French President Emmanuel Macron, and U.S. President Donald Trump ahead of time. Trump says with a tentative deal for Iran, he can now spend time on the other major global conflict, Russia's war in Ukraine.
Now that this is finished, we're going to be focusing on that.
Yesterday, he said he spoke with both Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
And I see maybe we can do something there. I really do. I think they're both open to it.
Carney has said this G7 will focus largely on geopolitical issues, but diversifying trade is also on the table. He met with the Italian Prime Minister and announced negotiations for Canada to buy jet trainer aircraft from an Italian company. Later, he'll meet with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It's still not clear whether he'll have an official meeting with Trump. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Evian-les-Bains, France.
The federal government will table its updated First Nations clean drinking water bill today. It reportedly removes a provision from a previous version. The clause would have recognized First Nations' right to clean drinking water. That legislation was abandoned when last year's election was called. Today's bill will likely not be debated before the fall. This is the last week before MPs break for the summer. To the Middle East. The peace deal between Iran and the U.S. is already being tested. Israel's military says Hezbollah fired rockets at troops in southern Lebanon. It comes as a former Israeli leader says his country must learn from its past. Crystal Gomensing has more from Jerusalem.
And after 2.5 years, all our enemies are still on their feet fighting.
Speaking with CBC, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak says the wars with Iran, Hezbollah and Hamas have been too long, lacked achievable goals, and have no sustainable diplomatic endings. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday said troops would remain in Lebanon's south, in Gaza and Syria for as long as needed as a security buffer. 26 years ago, Barak pulled troops out of Lebanon.
Insanity is defined by repeating the same action and expecting a different result.
He says solely focusing on fighting Hezbollah and not working with Lebanon's government is a strategic failure. This morning, Israel launched interceptor missiles in ongoing exchanges with Hezbollah. Both sides accuse the other of ceasefire violations. Late Monday, Israel Defense Forces say the Iran proxy fired several rockets at troops in southern Lebanon. The IDF also reported taking deadly action against 4 people it labeled as terrorists approaching soldiers.
1.2 million people now out of their homes. When they will come back and see these flattened places, the pictures will go to the whole world. It will put a stain on Israel.
Barak says protecting Israelis is always the right move, but the government must act in ways that enhance security, not harden the resolve of its enemies. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Iran's soccer coach says the team is the most repressed in the World Cup. Iran played its first match of the tournament Monday in Los Angeles. Players were told to leave the U.S. immediately after it was over. Iran's base camp is in Mexico due to visa issues with the U.S. Lindsay Duncombe was at the game. She has more on the outcome both on and off the field.
Islamic Republic terrorists!
Carmen Benjamin maneuvers her wheelchair past protesters as she leaves the Los Angeles stadium. Like those protesters, she sees the Iranian national soccer team as a tool of the Islamic regime, the one she fled decades ago.
So we were against the team. We want New Zealand to win. And there were lots of supporters for against Iran's team.
Benjamin snuck in the sun and lion flag, a symbol of pre-revolutionary Iran. FIFA bans political symbols, and the Iranian national team had said it would stop play if the sun and lion were visible. But protests didn't impact the play, and the soccer was dramatic. New Zealand scored first, just 7 minutes in, kicking off a wild back and forth that saw Iran come from behind to secure the draw.
I thought the Iranian team was playing a little bit sloppy in the first half, but they pulled it together in the second half.
Ahmad Amir says Iran played well considering what it took to get here. The team is staying in Mexico and is only allowed into the United States the day before each match. The Iranian team has 2 more group stage matches, 1 more here in Los Angeles and 1 in Seattle. There is a small chance if both the United States and Iran finish second in their groups, the teams could face each other in the next round. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Los Angeles.
A Canadian federal judge will hear the case of a soccer player from Ghana today. Thomas Partey was denied entry into Canada last Friday. The 32-year-old is awaiting trial on rape and sexual assault charges in England involving 3 women. Partey is hoping the Canadian court will overturn the decision to keep him out of the country. Ghana plays its first World Cup match against Panama tomorrow in Toronto. Ghana's government has called the situation extremely unfair. At least 12 children are recovering from a frightening experience in BC. They were hurt while standing in line for a ride at a water park east of Vancouver. The students were shocked by electricity after grabbing a metal railing. Andrew Stoonberg is with the Cultus Lake Water Park.
We've never had an incident ever occur like this before. It was very unexpected. We want to get to the bottom of it and eliminate any future question marks, any future concerns about this, and we won't open again until we've fully ruled that out.
Investigators are looking into why the railing was suddenly electrified. Police say the children's injuries were not life-threatening. There is more on this story at cbcnews.ca on our main page. Emily Bronte fans take note. For the first time since 1908, a rare first edition of Wuthering Heights is up for auction, complete with spelling mistakes. This copy has been in a private library since shortly after publication in 1847. Bronte's classic is being sold alongside a copy of her sister Anne's book, Agnes Grey. The pair could go for more than $1 million Canadian. A Mi'kmaq poet is remembering Indigenous children who died at a residential school and at residential schools across the country. The words of Michelle Syliboy capture the sadness but also offer a message of healing. As Elizabeth Chu reports, the poem is being recreated in music.
You Can Die Properly Now, an aria sung in Mi'kmaq by Emma Pennell during a rehearsal in Halifax. The words are by poet Michelle Syliboy from Wegohama in Cape Breton. It is a prayer to honor Indigenous children who never returned home from residential schools.
We mourn again. We mourn again.
For Syliboy, it also underscores the painful past that cannot be forgotten.
I don't want these denialists to take over the narrative and erase it.
Pennell, a soprano who's part Mi'kmaq, is lending their voice to the cause.
In opera, it's some of the most important people in the room at times in the audience. And some of the people who are in the audience need to hear it.
The first people to hear it were at the Montreal Symphony Orchestra last year. The orchestra will be taking this piece on tour to Edinburgh, Scotland in August. But at Scotia Festival of Music in Halifax, the performance is close to home for Siliboy, whose mother attended the Shubenacadie Residential School.
The impact is great, and we're still dealing with our healing.
An operatic tragedy with notes of resilience. Elizabeth Chu, CBC News, Halifax.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. Nice sunny day today in the city. Unlike last week, when a lot of people found themselves literally underwater, their homes at least, and now when it comes to financial aid, some flooded Manitobans are finding themselves stuck between a rock and a hard place, learning on one hand and realizing in some cases they didn't have the insurance coverage they thought they did, and also wondering how government assistance is going to play into this because it doesn't cover certain things. So stay tuned. We're going to hear why disaster relief has become so fraught. We're going to hear from someone who calls the current state of property insurance in this country a crisis. In addition, this hour on the show last week, the Winnipeg Police Force rolled out its body cam pilot project. We're going to hear in moments, in fact, from a lawyer of a family who's been calling for officers to use this technology for a long time. This after their son was shot and killed by police. So stay tuned. We'll have that interview. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She's in our news center with other headlines.
Well, family and friends are mourning a Winnipeg couple who died in a motorcycle crash over the weekend. The man and woman, both 65, died when the motorcycle they were riding was hit by a pickup truck in the arm of St. Andrews. The couple's family has identified them as Brenda Lee and Dan Keats, active in the Winnipeg Harley Riders Association. Fellow members plan to honor them with a memorial ride. And Winnipeg's mayoral campaign is already 1/4 of the way through, but the incumbent candidate has yet to make a campaign promise. Scott Gillingham says for now, he's focusing on being mayor. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Abby, how's the morning going so far? What are you noticing with current temps in the forecast?
Yeah, we're looking at already sunny-filled skies across the southern part of the province. While if you look up north, we're still seeing a rain build, and the Churchill area is more like a dance of misty conditions and light rain at this time. So it's pretty damp in the northern part of the province. Winnipeg right now, currently 11 degrees. We're seeing sunny conditions outside with just some clouds. West breeze pushing temperatures to a seasonal high of 23 today, and that's what we're seeing across the Westman, the Parkland, the Interlake, and even the Pembina Valley region this morning. Temperature sitting near 11 degrees, expecting to get close to 24. Up north, 0 in Churchill at this time. Winnipeg, we are at 11, warming to 23.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, we have a big power outage going on, huh?
Yeah, and that's actually caused some blank intersections as well right now, particularly, so the bigger power outage is impacting nearly 1,000 customers in the Osborne Village area. It kind of runs all the way from Wellington up to Main Street there. And closer to Main Street is where those blank intersections are right now. So that's right around River, Stradbrook, Harkness. The worst one, of course, is right at kind of Main and Stradbrook there. So that is completely blank. So you want to treat that as a 4-way stop. So just keep your wits about you if you're kind of heading from there, kind of past the Winter Club area. That is where those blank intersections are. There's about 5 of them. So look out for that. And that outage, the hydro says, is expected to be back up by 9:30, according to the website. That's their estimate. Other than that, though, if you do see anything else going on, if you're walking your bike and you're driving, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, the Winnipeg Police Service is testing out police body cameras. Last week, 40 officers began wearing the technology as part of a 6-month pilot project. The pilot will help the service assess if cameras can help support transparency, accountability, public and officer safety. Here's Winnipeg Police Service Deputy Chief George Labossiere speaking with reporters June 5th at the Winnipeg Police Board meeting.
But we own the data that's within it. It's protected, it's retained as controlled by City of Winnipeg retention bylaws and only disclosed through appropriate means, meaning that it's covered by legislation, policy, protected under FIA, FIPA, as well as court evidence procedures. There are certain privacy situations like within facilities, healthcare facilities, that kind of thing, where the officers have discretion to make sure that they're protecting people's privacy. And so in those situations, the camera can be deactivated, but generally speaking, no.
Now, this move to wearing body cameras is something that the family of Afolabi Opaso has been calling for. The 19-year-old Nigerian international student was shot and killed by a Winnipeg police officer during a wellness check in 2023. A police watchdog investigation did clear the officers involved of any wrongdoing last summer. Jean-René Dominique Quilou is the Opaso family's lawyer, and he joins us this morning from Texas. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
So the Opaso family, as we said, has been calling for police to wear body cameras. Why was this important to them?
Well, it's important because it's a first step to ensure that we have more accountability in terms of the situation, what transpired, so that there's more trust, more confidence of actually what took place, and it's also aiding the investigation and the police and maybe shortening the length of the investigations. But of course, it's a beginning, but it's not the end of the story, just having the body cam.
When the family has weighed in with you, how do they think their son's case might have gone differently had there been body cam footage?
Well, first of all, of course, they are not in agreement with the report. If you actually read the report, one of the officers was the sole sort of witness. So we believe with the cameras, at least we would have had, because we had the audio, grant you, but we would have had the footage, what actually transpired, and the investigation, as you know, it took a long time, almost close to a year. And so I think with body cameras, it would have, like I said, helped with the length of the investigation and sort of understanding what transpired. But I think at the same time, the footage also can serve as a training tool for other officers in similarly situated situations, right? So that can be also a powerful training tool for officers on how to de-escalate situation, how to intervene, how to interact with the public in different settings, right? If they're under a mental health crisis, or it can be in a domestic dispute. So there are many scenarios where it can be useful.
Legally speaking here, the police say the cameras, as you heard, will stay on, except where privacy laws require for them to be off. So officers will have some flexibility, as you heard, in places like private residence, if it's not a service call, which is critical because we were talking about, obviously, in the Opaso case, it was a wellness check. What are your thoughts on, cameras on, cameras off, and how they'll be used?
Yeah, well, I'm from the school of thought that it should always be on at all times. Obviously, the lawyer in me, there's privacy rights, but I think we have robust legislations in terms of privacy, and especially if the footages are being used for court procedures. We have court rules and in place on how to safeguard, for example, victims, to safeguard third party informant, for example. There are tools in place to ensure the privacy of the vulnerables, the citizens that are being checked. Also, if it's a private home, how do we deal with the footage in terms of the investigation? So I'm not satisfied with the officers having the discretion to decide. We'll see. Probably there are guidelines in place what might constitute, but I heard from the police board that the officer will have a discretion on when they deem it's appropriate to have the camera on, and I think that's an issue.
What about with privacy? The footage will be stored, we understand, on an iCloud-based system. So access then is determined by privacy laws and court evidence rules. What questions do you have about that, about the storage aspect of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's I heard it's owned by the city of Winnipeg, so that's a plus. We need to know where it is stored, and as you know, there's always in terms of operational limitations, there's always concern about like selective recording, as we talked about, video tampering, right? So that's not also outside of the possibilities, and those are sort of the major issues. But I mean, again, the storage, where it's being stored, for how long is it retained, right? So it's who can access those footage, and yeah, those are usually the major issue, and the integrity and authenticity of the recordings and the images themselves, especially in terms of investigation. That's often the issue in these circumstances.
There's obviously some trust that's been lost, to say the least, between the police service and with the public, which police continue to say they're trying to rebuild. I wonder if cameras could be part of that, in your view. I mean, the mistrust often leads to civilians taking their own recordings of police. How do you think that police, showing up wearing body cameras could impact their relationship with the public?
No, I think it's a good tool, and it goes both ways, right? It's also in case where the public can see what the officer or officers were dealing with when they intervene, how the other party was escalated, and then what was the situation, how they reacted, right? So I think an accountability tool on both sides, and also the public knowing that. Right or wrong, if they feel that the interaction didn't go the way that it was supposed to go, at least they have the confidence that there is evidence, there is a recordings or footage of what actually transpired. So of course it will enhance accountability. It will also provide objective evidence of what actually took place. So I think it's a step. It's a step. Obviously, solely the body camera is not what will help with in terms of trust between the public and the police service, quite frankly, but it's definitely a step forward for sure.
What do you hope to see come out of the 6-month body camera pilot here?
Well, it's a pilot. Hopefully they'll make it permanent, and obviously there's always the issue of cost, and especially when you're amassing so much, datas and footages and storage, as we talked about. But I think we have the means. It's a question of public safety. It's a question of trust. It's a question of accountability. And so I think it will be, in terms of the budget, it will be a well-spent money to make it permanent.
Thank you very much for weighing in this morning, Jean-René Dominique. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Good morning.
That is Jean-René Dominique Quilou, who is with us, lawyer for the family of Afalabo Opaso, a 19-year-old who was shot and killed by police in 2023. A police watchdog did clear the officers involved of any wrongdoing. If you want to read all of our reporting on the case, including the call for cameras, you can go to cbc.ca/Manitoba. Time right now is 7:23 a.m. We have sports coming up in a few minutes from now. Also, at 7:40, we have an interesting interview about wildflowers and those seed packets you might buy and plant. You might not want to put them in the ground. We're going to get some analysis of what's in some of those seed packs. In the meantime, to set us up, here's Tom Petty. Couldn't resist. Wildflowers on CBC.
You belong among the wildflowers. You belong in a boat out at sea. Sail away, kill off the hours. You belong somewhere you feel free. Run away, find somewhere you feel free. Run away, go find a lover. Run away, let your heart be your guide. You deserve the deepest of cover. You belong in that home by and by. You belong among the wildflowers. You belong somewhere close to me.
Tom Petty and Wildflowers. I love this one, Scott Regehr.
I was just thinking, there's nobody quite like Tom Petty. The roots, rock, Americana. They're variations, and he learned how to. He wanted to be a rock star. His uncle introduced him to Elvis Presley when he was 10 years old. He was filming in Florida, and his uncle was in the film industry. So I just did some crash research. That's how Tom Petty became a rock star.
I didn't know that story.
Yeah.
I do know, though, that this album, because I have it and have listened to it many a time, is gorgeous if you're driving across the prairies.
Oh, yeah.
for
Well,
a
that's just
summer
the way
road
it
trip.
feels, right? Oh,
Yeah.
just exactly
Put
like
your hand
that.
out the window and let it wave in the wind.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to let this wave away and make way for soccer. Let's start with World Cup this morning in sports. Scott, one of the most anticipated matches of the early stages.
Yeah, for sure. Anticipated, Marcy, not because either team involved is expected to raise the trophy at tournament's end, but because of what's been going on away from the pitch. New Zealand played Iran to a 2-2 draw last night in Los Angeles. Twice the Kiwis took the lead, and twice the Iranians tallied to tie it, showing immense resilience. It's a quality, Marcy, they've had to have since they're playing in the U.S., a country they are actively at war with. But Coach Amir Galanoy says he did not expect there to be this much upheaval.
We spent so much time in the air that I think we were hardly ever on the ground. We were supposed to come to Los Angeles 2 nights before this match, but we weren't allowed to. It was also in our plans to stay here tonight and return tomorrow afternoon. This is the most important time for our next match, when we need to recover and prepare ourselves. But instead, we have to get on a plane and return to Tijuana. So I should tell you that Iran's national team may be the most unfairly treated team in the history of the World Cup.
Galanoy didn't say, Marcy, who ordered his team to leave the U.S. for their training base in Mexico immediately after last night's match. But this does serve as an indicator of what the Iranians will be dealing with behind the scenes at the tournament. Their next match goes Sunday against world number 9, Belgium, back in Los Angeles.
Now, there was another game on Monday that made headlines for very different reasons.
A little Capo Verdean music to set the scene there. The remote island nation off the northwest coast of Africa, Marcy, pulled off one of the great results in the tournament's history, holding Spain, mighty Spain, to a scoreless draw. The Spaniards are among the favorites to win this World Cup, but despite an incredible 27 attempts on goal, were thwarted by Capo Verde's keeper, Vozinha. The 40-year-old was in tears, happy tears, after the match.
I cry because I grew up with my grandparents, and unfortunately they are not here. They died a few years before. They give everything for me, for my life, and also because my mom, she didn't manage to be here because of the money we have to pay for the visa. We didn't manage on time, and I would like she to be here, but I'm very happy for all the Cape Verdean people.
Vozinha speaking about the $15,000 bond that Capo Verdean fans were asked to pay if they were to attend games in the U.S. After major pushback from the travel industry and FIFA, the American government waived the requirement, but not in time for some, including obviously Vozinha's mother, to travel to the event. No doubt she was dancing amongst the millions around the planet that were dancing after that big upset yesterday. Spain and Capo Verde are separated by 65 places in the FIFA rankings, the biggest ever gap in a World Cup game that didn't end in the higher-ranked side winning. And this is the best stat of all for me. They didn't resort to dirty tactics. The Capo Verdeans had one foul in the entire game. the lowest number since 1966 in a
I
World
love
Cup match.
that.
Isn't that something?
I
They
love
just did it as
that.
a team, yeah.
What are you watching today at the tournament?
I mean, Senegal versus France. This is a match between the almost African champions and a French side led by Kylian Mbappe that, along with Spain, will be the favorites to win the World Cup. And we also have the defending champs in action for the first time, Lionel Messi in Argentina up against Algeria. And Canada, we're keeping an eye on them. We're going to hear from Jesse Marsh tomorrow. That's when he next meets with the media, where we will find out if Alphonso Davies might be in the roster for Thursday's game in Vancouver against Qatar.
Ooh, stop teasing us.
That would be nice.
All right, thanks, Scott.
Yep.
That's Scott Reguer with Morning Sports Live on CBC's Information Radio on 89.3 FM. Big power outage, 1,000 customers in Osborne Village. That shouldn't be restored, we understand, from Hydro till about 9:30. It is affecting traffic. Main and Stradbrook, Donald and River. We have lights out all in those areas. 788-3093 with any updates. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is a sunny 11. It's beautiful out there. We're going to see a few clouds roll in this afternoon, a westerly breeze, and a high today of 23. Days after flooding destroyed basements and uprooted lives across Manitoba, many homeowners worry about insurance and whether the province will help. Premier Wab Kinew has pledged to help people rebuild and recover. Rebecca Breckman says her Grosse Isle basement overflowed with floodwater, damaging appliances and the foundation. But she says her family may not be covered by insurance. They've been told it was caused by overland flooding and not sewer backup.
It feels like a huge, devastating loss. Like we assumed we were covered for it, right? Like you don't think those things are going to happen.
Breckman and her family are desperately drying and gutting the interior, trying to salvage what's left of their house. The province says its disaster financial assistance program will offer extra support to those facing financial hardship, including people who are underinsured. Now, the Insurance Bureau of Canada says more than half of Manitoba homeowners are not insured for overland flooding. You can hear more on this story coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. Family and friends are mourning a Winnipeg couple who died in a motorcycle crash over the weekend. A man and woman, both 65, died when the motorcycle they were riding was hit by a pickup truck in the arm of St. Andrews. The couple's family has identified them as Brenda Lee and Dan Keats. Sherry Lee is Lee's daughter.
They were so welcoming. They were welcoming people. She was, as an adult child, she was my best friend. I told her everything. Ever since I was like 18 years old. She's the one I came to with my problems. She's the one who helped raise my kids.
Lee and Keats were active in the Winnipeg Harley Riders Association. Fellow members say they were riding in a poker run on Saturday, picking up cards at various stops when the crash happened. The group plans to honor the couple with a memorial ride. Winnipeg's mayoral campaign is 1/4 of the way done. The incumbent candidate has yet to make a campaign promise. Scott Gillingham says he's busy being mayor.
Right now, I'm the mayor of Winnipeg, focused on being the mayor. Obviously, it's a dual role right now, but there's so much going on. My capacity as the mayor, we continue to focus on that. We are building the platform, and at the right time, we'll make announcements related to the platform.
The mayoral race officially started May 1st. Election Day is October 28th. Charges have been stayed against a Brandon police officer accused of assault and dangerous driving. Constable Myron Ham was charged after a man was hit by a police cruiser in September 2023. The police watchdog in the province recommended the charges, saying a man accused of arson fled as police arrived. He then suffered a broken arm after being hit by a cruiser in front of Brandon Police Headquarters. But Crown prosecutors said there was no reasonable likelihood of conviction in the case. U.S. President Donald Trump is downplaying the importance of the conflict in Lebanon.
We have that little pinprick out there that constantly rears its head, and that's Hezbollah.
That view runs counter to Tehran's perspective on Lebanon. Iran's foreign minister says ending the war there is the most important issue in the peace deal with the U.S. The prime minister is in France for the G7 leaders summit. Today, Mark Carney met with Ukraine's president, unveiling new sanctions against Russia. A 6.7 magnitude earthquake has rocked parts of Indonesia. The tremor sending people rushing into the street on Sulawesi Island. It was centered near Palu, the provincial capital. That quake lasted almost a minute and was followed by several aftershocks. There are reports of scattered damage, and patients from several hospitals had to be forced out of their rooms. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. A Canadian federal judge is going to hear the case of a soccer player from Ghana today. Thomas Partey was denied entry into Canada last Friday. The 32-year-old's awaiting trial on rape and sexual assault charges in England involving 3 women. Partey is hoping the Canadian court overturns the decision to keep him out of the country. Ghana plays its first World Cup match against Panama tomorrow in Toronto, and Ghana's government has called the situation extremely unfair. You can find the latest news updated throughout your day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
Thank you.
Abby Adiemi now with your regional forecast.
Bright and sunny across southern Manitoba. We're seeing sunshine outside while it's cool in the north. Most regions down south, we're seeing temperatures close to 12 degrees at this time, warming up near 24. Winnipeg gets to 23 today, while up north, we're seeing a bit more cooler temperatures, lingering clouds, and of course, light rain in the Thompson-Gillam area. But today, we're up for more like a warm stretch in the southern part of the province, heading to 24.
No doubt we've needed shade since 6 o'clock in Winnipeg. Corey, the drive.
Yes, good news. Those intersections there's about 5 that are impacted by a power outage. They are back up and running. May still be some delays, particularly if you're kind of getting onto Pembina there, because it was around the Osborne River area. So heads up there, but otherwise should be smooth sailing shortly through there. If you do see anything else going on, if you're walking your bike and you're driving, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Now, just for the sake of clarity, because Hydro always updates things online with socials, still we understand that power is not restored to about 1,000 customers.
Yeah, that was the case. Looks like it's coming back on slowly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to double check the outage map right away here just to see where that is at. But
so lights are up, so some pockets of power.
Last we heard, it was 9:30 was the full restoration time, but at least those intersections I know for a fact are up. Yeah.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Right now it is 7:36 a.m. Thanks for joining us on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or watching on YouTube. Well, next on the show, it is an enticing and whimsical idea. Replace the lawn and the grass with a beautiful smattering of wildflowers. And it's easier than ever to introduce a hardy flora to your yard, because with wildflower seed mixes available at almost any big box hardware store or garden center, you can just spread them around. But our next guest says while the seeds in those mixes might be wild somewhere, it doesn't mean they're wild here. Diana Bezecki-Robson is curator of botany over at the Manitoba Museum and author of Manitoba Flora, A Guide to the Vascular Plants of Manitoba. Now, she's here to help us break down what's in some of those generic wildflower seed mixes. And in fact, we had an assignment we gave her to look inside some of the packets. Hi, thanks for coming in.
Hi, good morning.
So we sent you the list of the contents of a popular wildflower seed mix, just sort of available in a lot of places. It's described as all-purpose wildflowers, 17 kinds of flowers. When you went through the list, what were some of your first impressions about what they were saying, plant these?
My first impression was, well, yeah, they're wild somewhere on planet Earth, but not necessarily in Manitoba. Out of those 17 species, only 2 of them are actually native to Manitoba, and an additional 4 are native to Canada or the US, and the rest of them are either from Africa or Asia or Europe. So my first concern was, oh, gee, I hope they didn't put anything noxious in there, something that's going to end up, turning into a really invasive weed. So I investigated a little bit further, and none of them were on the noxious weeds list, which was a good thing. But if people grow these, they need to recognize that what they're growing is not a native prairie.
What's the risk if something is on the noxious list, for example? Because we just sent one seed packet, but there's all kinds of these varieties out there all over the place.
Yeah, well, the big concern is that eventually it's going to grow into something that's going to start invading, wild prairies and displacing native species, or potentially becoming really bad weeds in croplands and things like that. So I was just thinking of one species in particular of a wildflower that was introduced that has become problematic for a lot of people, and that's creeping bellflower. So at one time, people thought, oh, this is a nice wildflower. We'll throw it in, and it'll naturalize. And now it's pretty much invading all of Winnipeg.
Is that those ones that are like they're tall, spiky, and then they've got the purple little bell-looking flower?
The little blue bell. Yeah.
How should consumers do research before they're picking up a seed packet or planting the garden? Do you have any suggestion on where to look or what to look for?
There's actually a really great website. It's called NatureServe, and it actually lists all of the native plant species that are found all throughout North America and actually ranks them as well. So it'll indicate how rare, how common it is, whether it's maybe introduced and naturalized. So if you're looking at one of those seed mixes, maybe don't buy it right away. Just take a photo of what the species are and then figure out, does this grow in my area? Is this actually wild? There are places that do sell actual wildflower, like native to Manitoba wildflowers, and those are the ones I'd really recommend.
What are the risks to the ecosystem if too many of the wildflowers are planted then? Like how quickly can they actually cause damage?
Well, I mean, they need to take
hold.
Yeah, they have to have a way of their seeds being transported. So if it's a species that has seeds that are wind dispersed, for example, like a dandelion, those can actually spread very quickly. Whereas if it's a different kind of seed, it might not spread as fast. So,
you have a term. I think this is your term. It's kind of like when we say greenwashing. Is it wild washing, you said?
I just coined that the other day. It was like wild washing. Yes, you just say, oh, they're wildflowers. They're good for the environment. It's like, well, no, not if they're not native species. So.
It's a perfect term, actually. When you think about where flowers come from, beyond where they come from, when you looked at the packet, was it a good mix of seeds? Like, would it look good in a garden? Or that's the other thing. Sometimes when we pick up these seed packets, just to move to the aesthetic of things, people don't really understand what they're buying.
Yeah, those mixes, typically what they do is they try and include a combination of annuals and biennials and perennials. So the annuals, those are the species that grow and flower in one year and then they die off. And the biennials produce sort of a rosette of leaves the first year and then it'll flower in the second year. The perennials are the plants that are going to be living every year. So they've created these mixes with a combination of those so that you'll get hopefully some flowers every year cropping up.
When it comes to people looking at, naturalized gardens, wildflowers, a lot of times people are trying to help pollinators. What are some of your, truly native wildflowers to Manitoba that you love the best that you might consider, suggesting folks think about for their yards?
Yeah, well, I really love black-eyed Susan. A giant hyssop's a really nice one. It's got nice purple spikes. Culver's root's really popular. Joe Pye weed, that one's quite tall. Butterflies love that. Gaillardia is a really beautiful one.
You mentioned that there's places where you can find legit Manitoba wildflowers. Can you name some of the spots in case people are listening and they're thinking, oh, I wonder where I should go look?
Yeah, Prairie Originals is a good one. Prairie Flora,
okay,
as well. You can buy native wildflowers at Living Prairie Museum. Some of the bigger greenhouses actually they sell native wildflowers from some of these greenhouses. So it's good to, if you're at a greenhouse, ask if they actually have any native wildflowers that you can buy.
What's your advice for someone who's never grown wildflowers, just to widen the conversation out for a moment here about, how to start? Because we all have these images of these flowing, yards full of these flowers, and it can be a challenge.
Yeah, people, I think, have a tendency to maybe bite off more than they can chew. If you're new to the game, what I would recommend is just creating a small flower garden, like maybe 1 or 2 square meters, not really big. I like to buy, at least of some of the longer lived perennials, it's nice to buy a seedling because they need a lot of time to grow a root. So if you put a few of those in and then you get some wildflower seed packets and scatter it in between. And then the most important thing in the beginning is to try and stay on top of the weeds, because if you're like me, I've got Manitoba maple trees nearby and I've got seeds all over my yard and now they're sprouting. And if you put in a wildflower seed bed, if you just put one in, for example, it would be covered with those seeds sprouting right now. So you really have to kind of keep on top of weeding and sort of familiarize yourself with the most common weeds in your yard are and what the native plants are going to look like when they're seedlings. And you can see a lot of those. You can get some good field guides of weeds, or even online, or there's some apps you can get that'll help you identify what the weeds are in your plot. And just keep it really well weeded for the first year, and then in subsequent years, you can actually start harvesting the seeds from the plants in your own yard, and then you can start expanding your wildflower bed and make it bigger. I wouldn't rip out a whole lawn all at once. That's a little bit too much to keep on top of.
It always looks like it'll be easier to care for, but we're looking at very mature lawns that people have worked on for years.
Yeah.
They're the ones in the garden tours where you're like, I'll do that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's surprising what you found in the seed packet for us. Thanks for going through it, and we appreciate you coming in.
Oh, you're welcome.
Enjoy the sun.
Yeah, have a good morning.
You too. That's Diana Bezecki-Robson with us live, the curator of botany at the Manitoba Museum and author of Manitoba Flora, A Guide to the Vascular Plants of Manitoba.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
It looks like this is maybe a one-day blip when farmers across the province need hot and dry.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take.
In general, it's harder to find a job even if you're educated.
From 12:15 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
When I was 5 or 6, my parents gave me seeds and helped me plant them. That was probably close to 70 years ago. And here I am still gardening.
It just brings everyone together. Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you weekdays on CBC.
7:45 is the time right now. Partly cloudy, 11 degrees in Winnipeg. Today's high is 23. Yesterday, how surprised were y'all by that rain? We knew it was a chance of showers and a thunderstorm, but it just poured so heavy. It was not good news in North Kildonan again. We're going to talk to North Kildonan Councillor Jeff Burwadi in the city about what residents there are still dealing with after rain fell in the area last week and then again heavily yesterday. So he's on the show after 8 o'clock. Now let's stay talking about all the issues with rain and flooding. The province has told CBC Manitoba, as you've been hearing in the news, that more details are expected today about the Disaster Financial Assistance Program and how it will work after last week's widespread flash flooding. Many are asking if it's going to be expanded to cover overland flooding, which is usually only covered by purchasing additional insurance. Now, today's announcement can't come soon enough for many Manitobans. Yesterday, we heard from Bill Gade, the Riva of Swan Valley West, and Stonewall Mayor Sandra Smith. They said many of their residents are struggling to figure out how to pay for damages.
Tons of questions, and we just don't have answers. We know what the DFA rules are for disaster financial assistance, and basically they say if you had insurance or if you could get insurance, you're not covered by disaster financial assistance. And so we've got a ton of people who, when they bought their insurance, they said, hey, do you want overland flooding? And they said, no, I don't. I'm never going to need that. Well, the DFA rules say they don't get anything. The Premier has said that's not the case, that he's going to make sure no one's left behind. But we're kind of left in a gap right now where we don't know what that looks like, because here's the rules the province told us versus what he said to everybody else. And we're kind of stuck in the middle with everybody saying, well, why aren't you honoring what he said? And that's not what the rules say.
The amount of rain that we got in such a short amount of time was unprecedented. What we're finding right now, a lot of our residents are discovering that they didn't have the insurance coverage that they thought they had. So it's really heartbreaking to see, the struggles that they're having with the insurance. There are so many claims that have been made over the last few days that unfortunately there's a bit of a wait for people to get their adjusters out. And so they're very unsettled with what they might be covered for and what they might not be covered for.
So here's what we have on the record so far. This is Premier Wab Canoe. Last week in Stonewall, days after the community got 255 millimeters of rain.
Today we've made the decision to activate a province-wide disaster financial assistance program. What this means is that we're treating, for the purposes of bringing resources forward to help Manitobans, we're treating everything that's happened this week from the Swan Valley region to this region as one province-wide event. In practice, all these local municipalities have declared states of emergency, and now residents, homeowners, businesses in these regions are going to be able to access disaster financial assistance. I do advise folks to start with your insurance first and see what your insurance will cover. But from there, reach out to local municipal leaders and the provincial government. We'll be there to ensure that you get the help that you need to be able to respond to these unprecedented events that we're seeing throughout Manitoba. So I want to be very clear, no one in rural Manitoba is going to be left behind. Your provincial government is going to make sure that there are the resources to help you clean up, to rebuild, and to recover from these terrible storms that we've been seeing recently.
Now, ahead of today's details, we also have a quote here. A spokesperson for the province said in an email to CBC, quote, "The DFA program offers extra support for Manitobans who might struggle to recover on their own, including people who are underinsured or facing financial hardship. Manitoba EMO encourages affected residents to work with their insurance broker to determine coverage and apply for DFA. The Disaster Financial Assistance Program will review all applications to ensure Manitobans are getting supports they need," end quote. So somewhat of repetitive of what the Premier said just there. But Jason Thistlethwaite has been listening in. He's an associate professor at the School of Environment, Enterprise and Development at University of Waterloo. But he specializes in disaster risk management and says when it comes to the availability and affordability of property insurance in this country, we're in crisis. And you've been listening in. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me this morning.
Well, I call this a crisis, you know, the nature of disaster risk management and coverage.
What the people are experiencing in Manitoba right now is a confusing gap in the way that we are managing recovery from disasters. There's only so much we can do to stop a 250-year rain event. So we really are going to be relying on recovery systems to help people pick up the pieces. And what's happened is that now that there is a private overland insurance product available, people who experience damage through that peril will no longer be able to access disaster assistance. And so we're getting a confusing message from governments right now about whether or not damage will be considered insurable, because many people, even though the product is available on the market, can't afford it, or insurers are offering very minimal coverage, particularly in areas like Manitoba where you have some concentrated flood risk.
And that additional product, just to be clear with the listeners here, is we used to not be covered, and tell me if this is correct, for overland flooding. And I think 10 years ago, then that product, that coverage for that insurance started to become available, and it muddies the water. In your view, who's responsible for all the confusion about coverage?
I think this is on our provincial and federal governments. Provincial governments are the major actors responsible for disaster management in Canada. They could see this coming as they very slowly started to pull back on what would be available in terms of disaster assistance. They're increasingly saying that if a loss is insurable, taxpayers should not be paying for it through disaster assistance. That's a reasonable principle, but it only works if people actually have access to insurance. And there are two things that the federal government committed to, and our provinces are supportive of this, that we have yet to see materialize. The first is a national flood insurance system. Why isn't insurance available for these people? Well, if the private market isn't going to provide it, many countries adopt a public-private partnership where a government will step in and underwrite some of the more high-risk areas. And over time, that support will decrease as an incentive for those communities to mitigate that risk. The other significant gap is that no Canadians have any idea about what their current flood risk is. When we ask Canadians who are living in high-risk areas in surveys across the country, between 6 and 10% of people routinely say they are in fact aware of what their risk is. You can't be expecting Canadians to be responsible for flood risk, knowing the ins and outs of insurance and disaster assistance, if you aren't providing maps in the first place to indicate what their actual exposure is.
So let's talk about the unprecedented aspect of this that further complicates things. So the Mayor of Stonewall yesterday was talking about elevation. That town is like at the elevation of the Golden Boy, if people can imagine that here in Winnipeg. That means that you're kind of not at a high risk generally for overland flooding because your elevation's up. However, you get this unprecedented event, 255 millimeters of rain, and you're flooding. How much responsibility does the insurance industry bear for some of the confusion about how this is all working?
I think they have a role to play absolutely as well. And in an ideal world, the fine print in insurance wouldn't be so fine. And it would be far less jargony, and it would help explain to people that the underwriting that explains your policy is justified because, well, you live in a 1 and 250 year flood risk area. And that is informing what the risk is and how we're going to do that policy. Insurers are very reluctant to do that. Why? Because it's a bad news story, and they don't want to be opening up the black box on their underwriting for how their processes are working, and they can view it as a competitive disadvantage. We have seen regulators come out more recently saying, hey, you need to be more transparent. You need to do that. But at the same time, insurance is a business. And so ultimately, this generally falls on the shoulders of governments to be sort of the insurer or the risk assessor of last resort, if you will.
So I want to stay with the Stonewall example for a moment, just because it's a good one. How likely is it that people in places like Stonewall could see their premiums go up now, despite not being traditionally in an elevation that would be flood prone?
See, it's important to address a bit of an uncertainty here. And again, this is where having flood maps would absolutely help us. The type of flooding that occurred in Stonewall is a different type of flooding that we generally map very well in Canada, and that's riverine flooding, where the water overcomes the banks, right? Water that pours down, overcomes the stormwater system, and then overburns our streets is actually a different type of flooding. And we really do not have a lot of good mapping around that. So that would be a first step. Insurance is a business, and because they've lost money on these claims that they're likely to pay out if people do in fact have coverage, they are going to recoup those claims through higher premiums and more restricted coverages. So people who have had their basements covered historically for some type of water damage, next year may get a bit of a surprise when they find out that the insurance company is not going to renew that basement coverage.
And it's, the reality is all of Manitoba, we live in a floodplain. And so, some of those maps you're talking about historically are going to say we're all sort of at high risk for flooding in this entire province. But the reality is, as you said, the distinction now between those two types of flooding becomes confusing and critical. What's your advice to people then who are navigating this and looking into their coverage and thinking about what they need in the future?
Well, for one thing, Manitoba actually is quite well defended to flood risk. There's a huge flood bypass around its most populated city, Winnipeg, and that flood bypass.
Yep.
Yeah, that should be incorporated into our risk assessments. When we look at our maps that we do research on, we have a giant circle around the city that says defended to the 1 in 700 year record. A lot of insurance companies aren't going to factor that in. They're going to assume that even at the 107 year level, which is, a very strong flood protection, Canada's most significant actually, that they just don't trust that our defenses, they don't trust that our local governments are maintaining and investing in infrastructure to keep up with the flood risk. So they aren't going to assume that even our efforts to mitigate the risk will be reflected in premiums. And this is what's leading to Canada having some of the highest property insurance rates in the OECD, increases of upwards of 80% over the last 10 years. Because we have a bit of a black box here. We have governments and insurers that know very well how flood risk assessment works in this country without any type of accountability mechanism to the average property owner.
Well, we'll see what the province here announces later today. As we said, we're expecting to hear more about how DFA will work after last week. Jason Thistlethwaite, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you for the time, and my thoughts go out to everyone that's struggling with the situation in Manitoba.
Appreciate you. That is Jason Thistlethwaite, as we said, Associate Professor for the School of Environment, Enterprise and Development at the University of Waterloo. As I mentioned, we are expecting more details then from the province about the Disaster Financial Assistance Program and what that is going to look like and what it will cover. Will they make changes? We expect to find out later today. Coming up later on the show after 8, we're going to talk to Councillor Jeff Berwadi about what residents in North Kildonan are still dealing with after rain fell in the area last week and then again yesterday, heavy rain. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells with news headlines.
Well, family and friends are mourning a Winnipeg couple who died in a motorcycle crash over the weekend. Both were 65. They died when the motorcycle they were riding was hit by a pickup truck in the arm of St. Andrews. The couple's family says they were Brenda Lee and Dan Keats, active in the Winnipeg Harley Riders Association, and fellow members plan to honor them with a memorial ride. Charges have been stayed against a Brandon police officer accused of assault and dangerous driving. We'll tell you why in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Power restored in Osborne Village now, so you should be having a better morning than maybe earlier. Also, a better commute because the lights in that area that have been flashing red have been restored as well. 788-3093 if you do need us. In Winnipeg, it's 11 degrees. The high today, 23. Lots of sunshine downtown through the day and a chance of showers in Thompson this morning, although over to the western Brandon, things are looking similar to Winnipeg with your high 21. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC, and stay with us for more Information Radio and more Your Morning Show coming up after 8. Right now, though, it is 1 minute to 8, and World Report is next.
On cue, the country music legend Vince Gill is making one record a month for a year to celebrate 50 years as a musician. Vince will tell you why he gave himself that challenge. Also, Vince Gill joined the Eagles a few years ago as their lead singer. He'll tell you the amazing story of his first day on the job.
What I don't want to do is give these people one more reason to not like me.
Q with Tom Power this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland and on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
In 2019, a teenager fell to his death in a wealthy neighborhood in London under mysterious circumstances. The journalist Patrick Radden-Keefe will be here to talk about a story about London, lying, and what parents don't know about their kids. That's coming up on The Current.
Is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The federal government will table its updated First Nations clean drinking water bill today. The legislation was previously abandoned when last year's election was called. Janice McGregor is following this story for us from our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, why has the minister taken so long to reintroduce this?
Marcia, after the Indigenous Services Minister promised it was going to be introduced in the fall, and then the Prime Minister said it was coming in the spring, the fact that the Carney government has waited until the final week of the sitting, days before recess, has sparked anxiety that this version of the bill might be weaker than what Justin Trudeau's government had put forward. Consultations with First Nations on legislation to recognize the inherent right to self-government as it relates to water infrastructure on their lands dates back to 2018. The bill that failed to pass in the previous Parliament also established their right to protect source water flowing into their territories. The Ontario and Alberta governments asked the federal government to abandon this bill, fearing it undermines Canadian competitiveness. New Democrat Leah Gazan is concerned that the revival of this water bill is going to be watered down.
I've heard that the government is pulling having clean, safe drinking water as a human right. I'm hoping that's incorrect. If that is correct, that's totally abhorrent.
But Conservative Billy Moran, who was chief of his First Nation before running from Parliament, he wants the focus to be on practical solutions.
Actual money to fix the issues as opposed to just a fluff bill that says they're going to create more bureaucracy in a bill that's one size fits all.
How does this relate to the ongoing work to lift long-term drinking water advisories still in place in so many First Nation communities?
Well, despite the Trudeau government's effort to find permanent solutions, 38 long-term drinking water advisories remain on 36 different First Nations, 28 in Ontario, the rest in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Nearly half of those now have infrastructure to produce clean water. Nevertheless, the community hasn't agreed to lift the order. Last fall's federal budget introduced over $2 billion to continue to build and fix water and wastewater facilities over the next 3 years.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. The Prime Minister is in France for the G7 summit. Mark Carney met with Ukraine's president. He reaffirmed Canada's support for Ukraine in its war with Russia and announced a series of new sanctions on Moscow.
And the sacrifice of the Ukrainian people will not be in vain. And the tide is turning as expected.
Thank you very much, dear Mark. Thanks to your team and people of Canada for strong support. We really have great allies.
The sanctions target Russia's energy revenues, defense, and so-called shadow fleet of tankers and vessels. U.S. President Donald Trump is also at the French summit. His proposed deal with Iran will dominate the leader's agenda. Tehran's foreign minister says a key piece to that plan is ending Israel's war in Lebanon. Today, Trump downplayed that conflict.
We have that little pinprick out there that constantly rears its head, and that's Hezbollah.
CBC News is in Iran to hear how the war is affecting people there. We are able to report with permission of the government, but it does not check our material before it's published or broadcast. Here is senior international correspondent Margaret Evans.
Of the many issues with the power to unravel the fragile agreement just reached by Washington and Tehran, Israel's invasion of Lebanon is the most potent. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi today. In our view, there are two parties to this memorandum, he said. One side is America and Israel. The other side is Iran and Hezbollah. Asked if Washington had offered any new guarantees on curbing Israeli military action, Araghchi's spokesman Ismail Bakai implied not, saying Iran would meet like with like. No one can expect the Islamic Republic to carry out its obligations, he said, while the other side refuses to fulfill its own. Many Iranians have expressed both relief and caution over the interim deal. It's expected to lead to negotiations on issues ranging from control of the Strait of Hormuz to lifting decades-old sanctions on Iran. The uncertainty of not one but two U.S.-Israeli wars against the country over the past year, along with a brutal internal crackdown on activists seeking change in Iran, has taken its toll on people. There's a period of calm and peace, and then right after, the war starts again, says Bahran, a 17-year-old who also points to economic woes and skyrocketing prices. We're so concerned about whether we're able to afford our ordinary lives now or in a week from now, she says. Heavy thoughts for a high school student. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Tehran.
As Margaret mentioned, part of the Iran deal also includes the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Trump says the blockade is over, but there is still a lot of skepticism about that claim, especially from the global shipping industry. The CBC's Anna Cunningham reports from London.
Under the glow of sunset late Monday, a single speedboat is seen passing by multiple stationary ships, all motionless in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. This has been the picture since Iran effectively held the Strait of Hormuz in a strategic choke point. But US President Donald Trump at the G7 meeting in France exuded confidence that all is changing.
The strait is already partially opened. As you know, they're doing a little hunting for a couple of mines.
That confidence, it appears, is not shared by the head of one of the world's largest global marine shipping and logistic companies. Jotaro Tamura, president and CEO of one of Japan's largest shipping firms, told the Financial Times that the US-Iran deal has to be material, adding that it needs to be translated into the real situations in the Strait of Hormuz. The Europeans have put together a maritime mission led by France and the UK, along with the Netherlands and Italy. French President Emmanuel Macron says they're proposing a strictly defensive and independent mission aimed at reassuring commercial shipping and conducting mine clearance operations. But last night at the G7, sitting alongside the French president, Trump indicated that might not be necessary.
I don't think we're going to need much help, but I don't think it's a bad idea to have a ship or two up here from a few countries, because you never know what happens. But I think it's going to be open, and I think it's going to be free sailing.
This morning at sunrise off the coast of Oman, those ships remained stationary, rocking gently in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
A 6.7 magnitude earthquake has shaken parts of Indonesia. The tremor sends people rushing into the street on Sulawesi Island. It was centered near Palu, the provincial capital. The quake lasted about a minute and was followed by several aftershocks. There are reports of scattered damage. Patients were evacuated from several hospitals, but there are no reports of injuries or deaths. They are stronger than you think. That is a finding of a new study on the world's coral reefs. Researchers say the ecosystems are not only surviving threats from climate change, but thriving too. Science reporter Anand Ram has the details.
Coral reefs are often framed as ecosystems beyond saving. This research shows otherwise.
Emily Darling, Director of Coral Conservation at the Wildlife Conservation Society, knows the difference between struggling coral and resilient ones.
There are 3 times more reefs that may be capable of surviving the climate crisis than previously thought.
From the Bahamas to the Philippines, the new study, currently under peer review, says there are reefs where corals can avoid, resist, and even recover from one of their greatest threats, extreme heat.
Most of the time you're diving the coral reefs, all the corals are different colors. When these happen, you go down, they're all white.
Craig Dahlgren is Executive Director of the Perry Institute for Marine Science. He's seen how heat drives this coral bleaching. It's not a death sentence if there's relief, but a powerful El Nino is here.
You would think that the ones that survive through the heat once, they're going to be the ones that can survive again, but not when they just get hit over and over again like this.
And then there's climate change. From burning fossil fuels, heat gets trapped in our atmosphere, and oceans absorb most of it.
Every degree of warming that we can avoid from climate change matters.
A call to action to save these coastal ecosystems that support marine life, boost fishing economies, and protect shorelines. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on that app and YouTube, on CBC. Thanks for being here. Well, hard to believe a week ago we hadn't yet experienced that storm, and now we're all looking at the aftermath across the province in so many different ways. And then yesterday, more rain. Rainfall in Winnipeg yesterday came down hard. It once again had some North Kildonan residents in that part of the city scrambling as they were still continuing to clean up basements from last week's storm. We have the area city councillor on about what he's been hearing from the community and what he hopes will be done to protect homes from flash flooding in the future. So stay tuned. Jeff Brawadi joins us in moments on CBC. And then we'll get into the forecast today, which does hold some hope here, people. Right now, though, let's go to Heather Wells. She has news headlines today. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the Insurance Bureau of Canada says more than half of Manitoba homeowners are not insured for overland flooding. It comes as hundreds of people navigate flooded basements and uncertain futures after last week's storms. Family and friends are mourning a Winnipeg couple who died in a motorcycle crash over the weekend. The man and woman, both 65, were active in the Winnipeg Harley Riders Association, and fellow members now plan to honor them with a memorial ride. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Abby, the weather today?
Well, I'll tell you, the sun made an appearance earlier, and we have cloud cover outside in the city, but fear not, it will be returning. We started with clear conditions. The sun rolled in during the afternoon period. You're going to see a mix of sun and clouds. Current temperatures hovering around 13 degrees as we climb to a steady high of 23. The winds will become gusty at some point later this morning, so be prepared for that. And there's a slim chance of showers in the evening period into the overnight, where we're going to see showers into Wednesday. Across southern Manitoba from the Pembina Valley region all the way to the Parkland, we're seeing sunny conditions with a mix of sun and clouds in some areas and mild temperatures. All the regions warming up to the mid-20s today. Brandon would get to 21, while farther north we're seeing cool and wet temperatures. The powerfully influencing sunny conditions warming to 20, while up north Churchill still stuck at 0 with those misty conditions at this time. Winnipeg, we are at 13. heading to 23.
All right, Abby, thanks.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, what do you know?
Well, there were issues in the River Osborne area earlier. Some intersections out because of a power outage in the area, but that power has now been restored completely to the area, according to the Manitoba Hydro website. So no worries there. One tip I did get, though, from Tim on the commuter line was at northbound St. Anne's at Worthington. There's an illegally parked car in the curb lane, so keep left to get around that. It was causing some actual pretty decent backup, so heads up there. Other than that, though, if you do see something else going on, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, it was deja vu for residents in North Kildonan. Yesterday's rainfall came down heavy and once again caused streets in the area to flood. All that rain brought raw sewage to some homes, including Michael Consors. His basement flooded a week ago today.
Tuesday's storm is something like I had never seen before. So I was kind of chalking. We've been here for 15 years. We're kind of chalking it up to, okay, that was like a once in a several decades storm. This is not going to be something we're going to have to worry about again. And again, I just happened to be home from work today. I'm looking out my kitchen window and it looked exactly the same as Tuesday. The rain was coming sideways, blowing like crazy. Then the hail started. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I just had a horrible feeling that this was going to happen again. So then I'm running outside, making sure all my downspouts are flowing, which they were. But then I see the front of my yard is starting to flood up because there's nowhere for all this excess water to go. So then I started to panic a little bit, thinking it's going to start coming into my weeping tile, which it eventually did. And that's fine. That's what it's supposed to do if it's working properly. But heaven forbid that drain backs up when the weeping tile is working. Well, now that's coming up through our floor drain. So as I was downstairs in my basement checking this out, I heard the toilet start to gurgle. And I just spent $3,000 having that bathroom cleaned earlier or to the end of last week. And I heard the toilet start to gurgle, and I walked into my bathroom, and once again, raw sewage, poo, and water coming up through my shower again.
That was North Kildonan resident Michael Consor speaking about what he was experiencing yesterday, just a week after those big flash storms. In a Facebook post, he says he's getting a backwater valve installed on Friday. Now, these recent storms have raised questions about how much our city's infrastructure can handle. Jeff Berwadi is city councillor for the North Kildonan ward, which has sure been hit hard, and he's on Zoom with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what are you hearing from people in NK about the flash rainstorms the city's been getting, including yesterday?
Well, obviously, a certain amount of frustration. When these things happen, my heart goes out to everybody who's experienced both sewer backup, overland flooding, even hail damage. We've seen all of that in the last 10 days in North Kildonan. Obviously, there's been issues across the province, but again, yesterday there was a weird system. I looked up the radar on my phone, and sure enough, North Kildonan had a severe band that went through it between 12:30 and about 1 o'clock yesterday that the rest of the city did not see to the same degree.
What are some of the biggest frustrations and questions that you're answering as you're, on the neighborhood pages and speaking to people's concerns in North Kildonan?
Well, again, why me? Like I've lived here all my life. Why is it flooding out today? Why does my area see more of it? Like some areas have it happen repeatedly. There's a number of answers to these things. There's different types of sewer systems throughout the city of Winnipeg, including in North Kildonan. Part of North Kildonan is part of the 1/3 of the city, about 1,000 kilometers of combined sewer pipes, where a single pipe carries both the sanitary sewer from your home as well as land drainage from storm sewers throughout the community. The other, 2/3 of Winnipeg has a more modern type of sewer system where you have separated land drainage and sanitary sewers through the neighborhoods. That can make a difference. But again, even the areas that have, a good, combined sewer system, there's different levels of protection. For the last number of years, we've put our emphasis, I would argue, on limiting and reducing combined sewer overflows so that when there's a major rain event, less treated or less diluted sewage goes into the river, as opposed to addressing the areas that have the highest flood risk. Again, as much as we need to do our part to clean up Lake Winnipeg, I would argue upgrading the sewer system for capacity is maybe a higher priority.
So let's talk about that a bit, because you wrote on Facebook, quote, during massive flash rainstorms, it's important to slow the rain hitting the combined sewers because there needs to continue to be capacity for household wastewater. There are intentional limits on the amount of overland water that can enter the sewer, unquote. Can you elaborate more on some of the solutions to that? Like in what you're actually talking about here? You want to do you want to change actually some of those limits then?
Well, in older neighborhoods that have those combined sewers, you put up a brand new apartment block. They do things like having areas that don't drain immediately. There's some on-site storage where the rainwater doesn't immediately hit the sewer. They create green areas that can absorb water. I mean, pavement straight to drain uses up a lot of sewer capacity. Different apartment blocks are being made to do things so that at peak rain events, the water doesn't hit the sewer right away, especially in those areas where we know the sewer capacity is limited. We're already doing that, and I think we're doing a decent job of it. But again, it's in those areas where we know where the sewer capacity, is maybe only at a 1 in 50-year event, but we're seeing more of them. So maybe now it's only a 1 in 10-year event where our sewer systems do get overwhelmed. Again, the best thing that individual residents can do is what your last guest from North Kildonan was saying: a sump pump and a backflow valve. And you need to test those things. Backflow valves, the seals can go, and it becomes quite useless. So if you have a plumber coming in to change out taps or do other work in your house, ask them to take the extra few minutes and a few extra bucks maybe, have them check out to make sure that the backflow valve is functioning and clean and working. Some pumps also only have a limited life. You should test them. They don't go forever. And perhaps, again, I think right now Manitoba Hydro, the provincial utility, they seem to have older infrastructure, and blackouts are becoming more common. You can actually buy battery backed up sump pumps. That may be something that people want to start investigating in, because again, especially if your power is known to be flaky. So again, yeah.
No, I was just going to interject and ask you more about the combined sewer issue. In the meantime, as we've had obviously 2 of these events in the last week, we don't know how much more frequent they're going to be. I want to go back to something you said earlier. Do you think that some of the decisions should be made now to in the meantime, before, I don't know, maybe a combined sewer system is replaced in North Kildonan, more wastewater should be diverted to the lake?
Or wastewater should be diverted. No, what I'm saying though is, in terms of our upgrading to our combined sewer systems, we should be more public about what the gentleman from the Insurance Bureau was talking about is flood maps, flood capacity maps of our sewer system even. Let people know that, oh, by the way, these homes over here only have 1 in 20-year protection for a major flood event. Over here, it's 1 in 50 years. Those are types of things that I think we should be a little more, we should produce and make public.
Got it. But as long as you've got combined sewer systems in North Kildonan, Councillor Berwadi, how can we help people with like increasing capacity in the system in the meantime? Or is the reality going to be that you're just at higher risk for flooding?
Again, a combined sewer system, when it's functioning properly, can provide the same level of base protection. Part of the reason that they dump into the river is to protect people's basements. In fact, the reason, again, in a low rain event, 100% of a combined sewer pipe still goes to the sewage treatment plant and gets treated. It's only during a major rain event where the system's overwhelmed that the excess goes through a gate and falls into the river, diluted with rainwater. So again, under normal dry circumstance and even in mild precipitation circumstances, 100% of that pipe gets treated. It's only in those major events. So again, you could build massive capacity and treat everything, but again, the idea, the whole purpose of those overflows is to protect people's homes and basements.
Anything that you will be addressing, at the city level, given that this has been so hard on the area that you represent in Winnipeg?
There have been things in the past that we've done, with major events like this. There's been limited instances where we've either waived tipping fees for people, for homeowners that don't have insurance and have excess garbage that needs to be disposed of, carpets and drywall and stuff from their basements and stuff like that. Perhaps there's some assistance that can be provided there. And then the other part would be we had a program sponsored between us and the province about 15 years ago, where we would provide a small incentive towards the cost of doing a backflow valve and a sump pump for homes that don't have those. Again, they've been standard required equipment since the 1980s. So it's only the older homes, and again, in many cases, in those combined sewer overflow areas that don't have them. Every house since sometime in the 1980s, I believe, is required to have them. Maybe 1990, but
Okay.
our house production 5 had one.
In terms of disaster financial assistance provincially, we're expecting the province. They tell CBC we'll get an announcement on what they'll cover later today. Do you have a hope of what you're going to hear in that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wasn't even aware that overland flooding was now an insurable loss.
Yeah, I think a lot of Manitobans actually need to be aware of that because it never used to be, but now it's for the last 10 years. You're correct. So yeah, please go on.
So, I mean, the last time we had major flooding in the North Kildonan area, things that were, people that had overland flooding issues, they were eligible for disaster financial assistance. Now, I guess by the letter of the law, that's no longer the case. So, again, I don't think I have overland flooding protection. I have some sewer backup, probably not enough to cover a major event in our basements anymore. Bought the house, over 10 years ago now. And the reality is the amount of coverage we bought back then doesn't cover nearly what it did. And even back then, it was probably on the light side. So it's probably time to review our own insurance, and probably the same for a lot of your listeners here this morning.
Do you hope the province steps up and says, in this case, even though, we under the letter of the law, we're not going to be covering you, that we will disaster cover this because it was such an extreme event?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a place for the province here to step up. I heard the Premier talking about communities that declared disasters. Again, even within a community, it could be pockets. I mean, a large city like Winnipeg, you've got a crazy band of heavier rain and hail, and that in one neighborhood versus another. I hope the program, doesn't just deal with some of the rural communities, but some of the losses and impacts in the city of Winnipeg were just as bad.
All right, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Councillor Jeff Berwadi for the North Kildonan ward. It is 8:25 a.m. on 89.3 FM. Before we get to the news, how about a little music this morning to lighten things up? Everyone's been through so much in so many different ways, right? So here's Manitoba pop artist Foja. It's one of her new tunes. It's called We'll Have a Family Someday.
Family someday, I'll feed you cherries from my hand. You never really go away, so might as well have something planned. We'll have a family someday, persistent like my shadow. I'm sorry I don't give you grace. You didn't choose to be. Let's run away, hold my hand in the rain. Let's take the next train. I assure you I can show you things better than what you've seen. Let's take the next train. Don't you worry.
Exposure, and we'll have a family someday. That's new music from her. Love how her voice warbles when she's on some of those notes. It's so cool. Coming up to 8:30, and Marjorie Dahos has popped in right now on CBC 89.3 FM to tell us what's coming up on the call-in that starts at 12:15, the provincial-wide call-in on Radio Noon. What's your topic?
Well, did you know the World Cup is happening right now, Marcy? I know a lot of people paying attention. There's been some good games.
I know, and I get involved because I love a good underdog story, and there are always those in World Cup. You know, the small country that holds off Spain. That's one of the stories, actually. That
Cape
didn't
Verde.
Get a goal.
Yeah, amazing. Well, that's what we're asking you. We know that soccer is popular right now because the World Cup is happening, but how do we grow the sport? It's not the most popular sport, as we know, here in Manitoba. So we're going to talk to a couple of soccer fans, soccer experts, about how do we grow the sport. And also we're asking you too, are you watching the World Cup? What storylines have you been following? Is there a team that you're cheering on? Give us a call, text us. Coming up at 12:15 today on Radio Noon.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marge.
Thanks, Marcy.
So check out the provincial call-in and weigh in, especially if you're into the footy. Big thanks to the associate producers who had items in the program today. Mary Big George, Michaela Van Kooten, Chloe Friesen, and Sierra Sanders as well. From our news department, Megan Ketcherson, Heather Wells, and Joni Nicolo. Our Studio 15 crew is Darian Mirage, Corey Funk, and Abby Adiyemi. And our producers, Nellie Gonzalez, and the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba is Leif Larson. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for being with us throughout the morning here on CBC. Next news coming up in moments. Just want to remind you that power's been restored around Osborne Village, and things on your drive should be pretty good right now. So we're late in the commute, but you can still reach us if you need. 788-3093. Your news from CBC is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. We're in for a really lovely day. No mention of rain in this forecast. A mix of sun and clouds this afternoon, a westerly breeze, and a high today of 23. The Insurance Bureau of Canada says more than half of Manitoba homeowners are not insured for overland flooding. This as hundreds of people navigate flooded basements and uncertain futures after last week's torrential storms. The Bureau's Rob Dupree says overland flood insurance only became available about a decade ago, and it has to be purchased in addition to standard home insurance.
More than 90% of the residents across the province are able to purchase that coverage, but a few people, they just may not be aware of the risks or may not realize that they need the coverage until it's unfortunately too late and you have a flood event like this happen.
Dupree says some insurance providers may not accept claims for damages if you don't have coverage for both overland flooding and sewer backup. The province says its disaster financial assistance program will offer extra support to those facing financial hardship, including people who are underinsured. Family and friends are mourning a Winnipeg couple who died in a motorcycle crash over the weekend. A man and woman, both 65, died when the motorcycle they were riding was hit by a pickup in the RM of St. Andrews. The couple's family identifies them as Brenda Lee and Dan Keats. Sherry Lee is Lee's daughter.
They were so welcoming. They were welcoming people. She was, as an adult child, she was my best friend. I told her everything ever since I was 18 years old. She's the one I came to with my problems. She's the one who helped raise my kids.
Lee and Keats were active in the Winnipeg Harley Riders Association. Fellow members say they were riding in a poker run Saturday, picking up cards at various stops when the crash happened. The Harley Riders Association plans to honor the couple with a memorial ride. Winnipeg's mayoral campaign is 1/4 of the way done. The incumbent candidate, though, has yet to make a campaign promise. Scott Gillingham says he's busy being mayor.
Right now, I'm the mayor of Winnipeg, focused on being the mayor. Obviously, it's a dual role right now, but there's so much going on. My capacity as the mayor, we continue to focus on that. We are building the platform, and at the right time, we'll make announcements related to the platform.
The mayoral race officially started May 1st. Election Day is October 28th. The Prime Minister is in France for the G7 summit. Mark Carney met with Ukraine's president today, reaffirming Canada's support for Ukraine in its war with Russia and announcing a series of new sanctions on Moscow.
And the sacrifice of the Ukrainian people will not be in vain. And the tide is turning as expected.
Thank you very much, dear Mark. Thanks to your team and people of Canada for strong support. We really have great allies.
The sanctions target Russia's energy revenues, defense, and so-called shadow fleet of tankers and vessels. U.S. President Donald Trump is downplaying the importance of the conflict in Lebanon.
We have that little pinprick out there that constantly rears its head, and that's Hezbollah.
That view runs counter to Tehran's perspective on Lebanon. Iran's foreign minister says ending the war there is the most important issue in the peace deal with the U.S. The federal government will table its updated First Nations Clean Drinking Water Bill today. It reportedly removes a provision from a previous version. The clause would have recognized First Nations' right to clean drinking water. That legislation was abandoned when last year's election was called. Today's bill will likely not be debated before the fall. This is the last week before MPs break for summer. You can find more news updated throughout your day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thanks.
Thank you.
That's live from our news department this morning. Heather Wells and crew, and Corey Funk's popped in.
Yeah, quiet commute right now. Might still be an illegally parked car northbound St. Anne's at Worthington and the curb lane. Other than that, though, pretty quiet. If you do see something, though, you can always give me a call, 204-788-3093.
So spoiler alert, except not spoiler, I guess maybe teaser alert. Tomorrow, we are starting a new contest. And if you like basketball, you want to be listening.
Particularly the Sea Bears.
Yeah, particularly the Sea Bears. We can say that part out loud.
Yeah.
We've got a really good prize, people.
Yeah.
So tomorrow we start telling you how you can win. This is going to take multiple days because we have we're going to be looking for multiple winners. So if you're a fan of the Sea Bears, do not miss Infrared tomorrow. 7:40 is the specific time you want to have a date with the radio.
Tune in.
All right, Abby, speaking still of today, weather.
It's going to be sunny, warm, and it's going to be a beautiful day across southern Manitoba today, though we're still seeing damp and wet conditions as you go up north. The south, current temperatures between 10 and 14 degrees. Most of the regions will warm up into the 20s, close to 25 today. While for the northern region, we will just see highs close to 20 degrees. Winnipeg, we're ending the show at 13. And we get to a high of 23 today.
Good trumpet. I liked it. I always try to do it like how you purse your lips and then I end up spitting on people. Yeah, it's not popular in the newsroom. All right, take care, everybody. Enjoy that sunshine, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on Information Radio. The Currents coming up next.